that those questions will be fully addressed by the investigation. While at the scene this evening, this was yesterday evening, I heard and felt the anger of the community. Everyone involved will forever be impacted. I will be leaning on what the investigation gleans to answer the many unanswered questions that exist. I also plan to join the mayor in meeting with members of the community and members of Mr. Wallace's family to hear their concerns as soon as it can be scheduled. So that's a statement coming from the police commissioner, obviously a statement coming from the mayor, who says that he has watched the video of this tragic incident, quoting him, and it presents difficult questions that must be answered. I spoke tonight with Mr. Wallace's family and will continue to reach out to hear their concerns firsthand and to answer their questions to the extent that I am able. So City Hall, from the mayor to the police commissioner and everyone else being very guarded in their responses. We here at Reality Check did reach out to the Philadelphia Police Commissioner's office, seeing if she was available for any sort of comment, if she wanted to at least have a conversation, if not about the incident directly, about the tensions that are being felt in that are being felt in Philadelphia, and are being actually noticed nationally. Actually, not too long ago, I was called by our friends in Chicago, WVON, and they wanted to have some conversation about exactly what's going on in Philadelphia. So there are people who are noticing nationally what's happened in Philly. And this is not the only incident. Philadelphia police under a very uncomfortable spotlight. I mean, we had just a couple of years ago, we had the Starbucks incident with unarmed, innocent Black men being arrested by Philadelphia police at Starbucks just for being there in the space. We also had the tear gas hurting of protesters on a Center City freeway. So, people noticed that, and now we have this. Definitely there is a need for some conversation, for some answers, but for some fundamental realtering or restructuring of the way policing is done, obviously nationally, and the way policing is done, especially for those in Philly who are listening and kind of watching all this unfold. Definitely there needs to be a change. There still needs to be some sort of change or significant restructuring of the way policing is done in Philly. Obviously, police, law enforcement everywhere, still not reading the national room. Still not reading the national room. That's the other thing. But anyway, we reached out to the Philadelphia Police Commissioner's office, saying if she'd have a conversation about that, at least. The response we got was, "Thanks for reaching out to us in reference to an interview. However, we are unable to accommodate you at this time. Thanks again." So, as someone, kind of who comes from that political strategy, communication strategy space, Philadelphia Commissioner's Office is really going to have to up their communications conversation game. They're going to have to. It can't just be, okay, you can't talk about the case. I understand that because it's a pending investigation. But there are elements around the case. There's a lot of emotion. There's an opportunity there to have a philosophical, spiritual, emotional discussion or connection with the larger Philadelphia public. And so there's just an opportunity moment there to have a much more direct kind of, honest conversation about, okay, well, how do we get through this together? How do we explore this together? And so without getting into, you can keep those conversations separate. Right? I mean, of course, you're going to get questions about like, okay, well, where is the investigation at? What happened? Okay, we understand it's pending. But what are your feelings as a police commissioner in terms of like the overall mood in the community? They've really got to, I've always said that. And this is nothing, once again, I don't want to get into unfair disparaging of the police commissioner. I don't, because I want the police commissioner to work. She hasn't been a year into the job. I know it's a very stressful, very difficult gig. We're also in the middle of a pandemic that's made her first year on the job extremely difficult. You just don't know. We're not in her shoes. I want her to work. I want everyone in City Hall to work. I'm not that type of guy. I'm not that type of person. I've said that many times before in this program. I'm not petty. I'm not, just because like there's going to be political disagreements here and there. Like, I don't want people in City Hall. I don't want the mayor to work. I wish they would do better. and hey, here are some recommendations or suggestions for how you can do better. But I want the police commissioner to work, particularly since now we're at like 400 homicides and we haven't even reached the end of 2020 yet. That's another issue. So, but like, figure out a way, figure out a savvy, be media savvy. That's all I'm saying. Be media and communication savvy. I'm just not seeing that yet it could really help diffuse a lot. This is just my humble, really humble opinion on that, particularly with respect to a situation like this. And she just kind of keeps missing the mark on that. I don't exactly know why. It's not, maybe it's not her. It's just kind of maybe it's the shop, right? Every high profile public capacity like that, either they have a really good effective communications or strategic communications shop who knows how to have those difficult conversations with the media and navigates it, or they don't. And I just wonder about kind of that capacity, that internal capacity within the Philadelphia Police Department. Because like in a situation like this, you use that, you grab onto that as an opportunity to have like a refreshed conversation with with an already tense and anxious public just a week away from election 2020. Speaking of election 2020, I do want to bring on our guest at the top of the 10 o'clock hour. We have Glenda Carr joining us. She's back. It's been a while since we last talked to her. She's president and CEO of one of my more favorite organizations in the country, Higher Heights for America. Higher Heights for America, great organization that focuses on identifying, grooming, and supporting Black women candidates, and they've been very successful at doing that over the past few years. I've been watching them. Higher Heights for America. Go to Higher Heights for America PAC.org. Do I have that correct, Linda? Do I have the exact website correct? I think it's Higher Heights for America, and then there's Higher Heights PAC, correct? How are you doing?
Yeah. Hey, how are you doing? Long time no talk to. Yeah, the quickest place to find us is at higherheightsforamerica.org, and then you can click through and be part of all of our community.
Excellent, excellent. Higherheightsforamerica.org. Doing wonderful work. You've been doing the work. I got to give it to you. I've been quite a fan of that work, and others have been too for quite some time. So continue doing what you do. I'm really pleased to have you on. We're about a week away from the election. You all have actually conducted a poll recently. You commissioned a Black Women Votes poll. You can go to blackwomenvotes.com for more on that poll to see the results of that poll. What is this telling us about the mindset of Black women heading into this election, Glenda? Because that's a very important conversation. We want to, of course, know how motivated are Black women in 2020? Are they more motivated than they were in 2016? And they were hyper motivated. I mean, Black women were the electoral bloc that was trying to save the world in 2016. What does it look like in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, the sense of urgency around this election, Black women are feeling that. And so our Black Women Vote program recently, as you mentioned, did what I called a temperature check, right? Because I know that I'm feeling, anxious, that I, at the top of mind have concerns, and I wanted to hear what Black women from across the country had to say. And so 75% of Black women say they are more motivated to vote in this election than ever, right? And that what keeps them up at night is COVID-19, the outcome of this election, racism. Oftentimes, Charles, you'll hear when Black women talk about police brutality, they talk about their concerns about the Black men in their lives, their sons, their husbands, their brothers, their fathers, the sense of being afraid that they may not come home if they go out. This is the first time I've really seen in research hearing Black women actually verbalize that they're concerned about their safety and feeling not safe in their Black skin, all stemming from the Breonna Taylor incident, right? Killing. That the notion that they talked about being in their homes and not feeling safe in their homes. And so we recognize that our political power, right? So what also we found in the survey is that Black women are absolutely in tune with that they will help make the decision on the election day of who our leaders are. And they know that is actually tied to the ability to address the top issues that they care about.
That's a really important statement that you just made there because black women, I said this to someone, I was raised in a household of black women, and black women are just naturally, by their essence, just very selfless. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
just and that selflessness is just unmatched. And so that's very profound, like that you see that point in that poll, because yeah, I mean, the normal conversation is, okay, well, what can black women, in terms of, whether it's your mother, your grandmother, your auntie, your big sister, like what can they do for me? How do, we always have that conversation about black women supporting black men, or being that support. And that's always been the conversation over the years, that supporting cast of black men. And that still remains. But to hear you say that, like, okay, this is the first time that you've seen verbalized in a major poll of black women respondents. We're scared of us too now. Like, just letting people, either reminding people or letting people know, hey, listen, this is just as real for us as it is for black men. I just find that very profound when you said that. I think that's very significant.
Yeah, it's the thing that really stuck out to me in the research. The other thing that touched me is because I am a solid Gen Xer, is
Hmm.
that Gen Xers are feeling the most anxiety around the moment we live in and the election. I certainly,
Mm.
can see myself in that, and obviously see my girlfriends and the women in my family who are, my contemporaries, feeling a pure sense of overwhelmingly concern about the pathway forward. But our boomers, right, our parents, our grandparents, they have more hope for the future. And I
Hmm.
point to that is because they've lived through generational change already.
Hmm.
And so they know that there's something beyond this. And I think that's what's fueling not only, the seniors in our community, but frankly, what we've seen during COVID-19 is an intergenerational engagement, particularly with young black women who left their quarantine homes with their aunties and their moms, and that we all protest. People either protest physically in the street or in their homes by raising their voices online. And at the end of the day, that we see a record number of black people voting and black women voting. Right now in Georgia, we've doubled
Hmm.
the number of African Americans who voted early. Like 600,000 black Americans have voted in Georgia, double what they saw in 18, because they know that
Wow.
they want to make sure their vote is being counted.
Right.
So we're getting there early. The other thing the poll pointed to real quick, Charles, was that black women, over 73% of us are like, nah, I'm voting in person. I'm voting
Mm.
early, or I'm voting
Yeah.
on election day. Some of that is tradition, right?
Right.
But it is also the notion of, nope, I don't know about that mail. I'm going to make a safe vote plan and to vote
Wow.
in person to ensure that their votes are counted on election day, because that's
Hmm.
part of the uncertainty of election day this year, right? Which is there are states
Right.
that ballots won't be open until after election day. And so
Right.
that's the work of Black Women Vote, giving black women the tools to make a safe vote plan that works for you. And that
Mm.
may mean you are voting by mail, you're voting early, or voting in person.
Got it. Got it. What about you? What are you voting in person, by mail? Just out of curiosity.
So
I
I
don't mean
so
to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer
I
that question if you don't
no,
want
no,
to.
no. I definitely so voting plans are very important, which is, every cycle we come on and talk about how important it is, because if you don't make a vote plan, you can have a failed vote plan. So in the primary,
Right.
I had a failed vote plan because I forgot to mail in. I forgot to mail in my absentee ballot request to
Mm.
get my ballot. So I voted in person for the primary. I had my vote plan in play, and I do this for a living. I had my vote plan in play.
Right.
I have my ballot sitting here, and I will make a determination over the weekend if I'm going to drop it off, because where I live, I can drop off at a
Right.
poll site, or frankly, I may vote in person on election day.
Wow.
But
Wow.
I've got
All
two
right.
options now.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. You got your vote plan. Got that vote plan is real. Hashtag vote plan. Right. You got to have that in
Mm-hmm.
play. Are you concerned about Because I looked at that poll deeply, and there's like a quarter of respondents. That's a significant number who say they don't have much hope in
Mm-hmm.
change. And what do you think that means? And you did kind of hint at that just a few moments ago, that a lot of that's generational. You definitely see the younger the demographic, the Black woman demographic, the more skeptical of what's on the horizon they are. Are Black women viewing this election primarily as an exercise in self-protection and harm reduction, just due to the political and pandemic conditions that we're in? I mean, that's pretty much kind of the driving force here.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Black women are closest to the pain in our community. And when you're closest to the pain, sometimes you can't see past that. Black women are overwhelmingly the essential workers that never had the ability or luxury to stay home in quarantine and had to leave their homes. Black women are at the bottom of every economic, health, and social indicator in this country. So why continue to pour into a democracy that doesn't pour back into us? And so when someone says that, I go, because at the end of the day, when we change what leadership looks like and put forth those who can put the issues that we care about at those decision-making tables, that is actually the ability for us to move the country to higher heights. And for me, that's the hope. And we have a record number of Black men running across this country, up and down this ballot, including at the top of that ticket, right? And so that is the work, is to change our leadership. And then democracy doesn't begin and end on Election Day, and it is up to us to push back on a Jared Kushner, who yesterday said that, the president can't want more than what Black Americans want. Black Americans want an economically thriving, educated, healthy, and safe community. And our vote provides that opportunity, because we are going to vote in and vote out leaders that will center the issues that we care about.
Yeah, yeah. I'm also want to get your thoughts, Glenn, because a lot of conversation in the past couple of weeks has been consumed about Black men voters. And, over 2016, 2017, 2018, it was a lot of talk about Black women voters. There's quite a bit of conversation. Obviously, you're familiar with it. You're privy to it, about Black male voters. And there's this sense of many of them out there feeling disconnected, jaded, and alienated. So how do we connect those two? Because I sometimes fear with that conversation, it then disconnects or it detaches Black women voters from Black male voters a bit too much. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we all want like that unified, strong, collective, very vocal Black voting bloc that makes its statement at the polls and that also exercises clout when it does that. And is that realistic for me to want or expect?
Yeah, I mean, we want this conversation around Black women and Black men is an important conversation, right? We all want to be seen in this democracy. And, we've done a lot of the work around the elevation of Black women's political power and leadership has been done because of the investments of organizations like Higher Heights and many of our, partnering organizations. At the end of the day, as you know, Black women are those who are driving, literally driving or figuratively driving participation to the polls, right? We organize our house, our block, our church, our sorority, and our union. But I also think there's an opportunity to have a conversation. There's a lot of, I think, conversations that African-American men and women ought to be having around our political participation, both from how do we support and expand Black leadership, and particularly expand Black women's leadership, and how Black men have a role to play in that work. And frankly, this election cycle, is the notion we are not a political monolith, right? And that is actually the diversity of our community. But I do know that some mamas and some sisters and some friends and girlfriends are having some serious conversations with Black men this cycle. And one is going to be the discussion around the importance of their vote. And I think for the first time, there's actually a conversation that's going to have to happen, like, well, who are you voting for? Because there was a lot of African-American men living in homes voting for someone different than I think the women in their lives thought they were voting for, right?
That's right.
And so certainly listening to, social media around my friends, they're definitely having conversations with the men in their lives about, one, the importance of voting. What's interesting, though, Charles, in this cycle is you've seen, more, so I call it the vulnerability and the transparency of Black men who are celebrities and influencers, frankly, saying that they haven't voted, and this is the first time that they've voted. right? And
Right.
so obviously there's been some people trying to shame. I'm like, no, that to me, that's transparency, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And they're speaking directly, I think, to Black men who aren't voting. And it's a variety of reasons. I didn't want to participate. I didn't want to be part of
Yeah.
the Democratic structure, or not knowing their rights around their voting restoration rights. And so I think it's important that these, these grown men are sharing their stories about not voting for decades or not voting at all, to spark an actual real conversation among our community.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's I appreciate that. Yeah, we do need to have that conversation. Unfortunately, Glenn, we gotta let you go, but we gotta bring you back a little bit more often. Glenda Carr is president, CEO of Higher Heights for America. Check them out. See how you can get involved, support them. HigherHeightsForAmerica.org. Join us and go to Black Women Vote. Right? It's BlackWomenVotes.com. I just want to make sure I get that correct. BlackWomenVote.com.
Yeah.
Right, vote without the S, blackwomenvote.com. Check that out. You can check out this latest poll that they had released recently. It's very insightful. It's what we've been talking about here at the top of the Reality Check Tuesday edition. Thanks so much, Glenda. Really appreciate your time on this. Appreciate this work once again. You all are getting it done at Higher Heights. So continued success to you, and be real safe out there during this election. We'll talk to you soon on the other side of it.
Great. Thanks. Take care.
All right. Take care. Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back on the other side, we're going to go into another conversation about what's happening with the elections. Judith Brown Dianis is the executive director of the Advancement Project. We're going to have a conversation about voter suppression. She's been in and out of Florida, kind of watching that landscape very closely. Florida, another major battleground state, and a lot of voter suppression taking place down there as well. So we'll be talking with Judith very shortly here on our Tuesday edition of Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We've all heard people say this election is the most important of our lifetime. Let's remember why that's true. Under the Trump presidency, racism has found a tragic new normal, emboldened by a president who has demonstrated disrespect and disregard for our communities while embracing and protecting white supremacists. While the coronavirus was taking our family members from us, Donald Trump deceived the nation by withholding information that could have saved lives. He protected himself instead of protecting us. Our economy is in shambles, our children's education jeopardized, and the Trump administration is in court right now trying to take away our health care. This has to end. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the leaders we need to chart a path toward opportunity, justice, and healing. From affordable health care to quality education and jobs, there's only one choice to move us forward. Vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Paid for by Black PAC and Priorities USA Action, blackpac.com and prioritiesusaAction.org, which are responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Dietz & Watson has been making premium meats and artisan cheeses for over 80 years. And when it comes to stacking sandwiches and party platters, they've got something for everyone in the family, like maple honey turkey breast, American cheese, buffalo chicken, and more. So get to your local deli and taste 4 generations of family recipes. With Dietz & Watson on the table, you'll have everyone coming back for seconds and thirds. Dietz & Watson, it's a family thing since 1939.
Always Best Care is a great place to work.
Flexibility,
leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
WURD Radio presents the following information to help you navigate the up-and-coming election. Still concerned about COVID-19 and voting in person? Pennsylvania has you covered with mail-in ballots. Simply submit a completed ballot by mail. So long as you request that mail-in ballot between now and October 27th, go to votespa.com and apply for your mail-in ballot today. When your ballot arrives, read it carefully and follow the instructions to complete it and return it. You can also track and confirm that your County Board of Elections has received the mail-in ballot by going to votespa.com. For more information on how to vote in Pennsylvania, visit states.aarp.org/Pennsylvania. Vote early. WURD Radio presents the following information to help you navigate the up-and-coming election. Stay informed and vote. For more from Charles Ellison, tune in Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. or visit WURDradio.com.
Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM within Philly proper, beyond Greater Philly in the Delaware Valley area, throughout the nation, throughout the world. We are live streaming on WURDradio.com. WURD TV, of course, people watching us on our Facebook live stream, facebook.com/4word and youtube.com/onWURD and by WURD app as well. I'm at Ellison Report on Twitter, hashtag Reality Check, and just continuing to offer insights, occasional insights, and occasional analysis for you to glean at hashtag WURD on politics. That will become much more active in the coming days, particularly since we're just a week out from election 2020 and watching very carefully the hotly contested battleground state of Pennsylvania, and specifically this corner of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, as well. Joining us, speaking of that election, and speaking of also voter suppression, that is something that hangs heavy on the minds of many. People are experiencing it. In fact, we're talking with Judith Brown Dionis. She is the executive director of the Advancement Project National and also Action Office. Go to advancementproject.org for more information on how to get involved with them. To my understanding, hi there, Judith. How are you doing? To my understanding, you've been spending quite a bit of time in Florida.
Mm-hmm. Well, Florida tends to be a close election usually,
right.
And when we have close elections, that's where we have shenanigans that happen to steal elections, or
right.
We're seeing intimidation already. So yes, I'm here, but our team is in Florida. We're actually in Pennsylvania, but Lehigh County. We're also in Virginia and in Georgia.
Wow. Yeah, talk to us about. Let's start off with. I'm real curious about Florida because we haven't talked about Florida enough in recent days, but let's start with that. Like, what are you saying there in terms of the voter suppression, the shenanigans as you just called it? How severe, how bad is that on the ground there?
Well, it's hard to tell so far, right? Because what happens is all of this voter suppression often happens kind of like, in discrete ways, right? So it's these little things that like the local election officials can do. So we're monitoring, for example, things like vote by mail to see which ones are rejected and why they're being rejected. We also, of course, here, in 2018, the voters passed an amendment to the Constitution to allow people who had felony convictions to get their voting rights back. But then the courts decided that they had to pay their fines and fees first. So what we're also monitoring is whether or not these election officials are flagging those people who registered to vote, who have have felony convictions, to make sure that they're not doing the right thing and implementing that. Also concerned about kind of like the crazies at the polls trying to intimidate people. And so we're, driving by polling places. We have a lot of folks in the state who are poll monitors for the nonpartisan poll monitors have now been trained up for de-escalation so that we can make sure that people are not intimidating people. We also are doing work to make sure that the police don't come to polling places. So we're, reaching out to police departments to say, your mere presence is an intimidating factor, especially in the state of Florida where there are sheriff's races. There's 67 counties here. There's 66 sheriff's races this year.
Right.
And most of those sheriffs in the state of Florida have endorsed Trump and are very vocal about their support for Trump. And so, we don't want them at polling places in uniform, et cetera. So, so there's like a number of things that kind of come together to give you this cloud of voter suppression that hangs over the state of Florida, that will be here. I'm here until November 5th because we just don't know what could happen.
What exactly can happen. That question about intimidation at the polls, I guess, is a two-part question here. One is that on one hand, like you definitely don't want that level of intimidation with, armed police officers, armed guards being there on site and adding this unnecessary layer of tension, and voters, particularly black voters, feeling that kind of hostility or animus. They shouldn't feel. You should feel very comfortable when you walk into a polling location. But then I want to get your thoughts, Judith, on concerns over election week, election day, also post-election violence, or violence, potential violence from folks who are calling themselves poll watchers, but they're like armed white nationalists. I don't want to call them militias. They're armed white nationalists. From some sort of subtle directive from the president to go poll watching. I mean, you would still want like law enforcement. How do you? I mean, where's the balance in terms of needing law enforcement to be there to respond to those types of situations?
Right. Well, I mean, so I think, it depends on place by place, but in terms of like how the community feels about the police, like, so for example, today I would not suggest that the police be at a polling place in the city of Philadelphia, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because
right.
people are feeling a certain kind of way about the police and don't trust their presence and don't trust their ability to actually de-escalate a situation, right? Because when they're called into a situation, their de-escalation often means the death of a black person. And so I think what we are, part of what we're trying to do is also, as I was saying, the efforts for voter protection this year has included training up some of the poll monitors to actually do de-escalation. So the people who are there through election protection and through other organizations who are being trained to do de-escalation. We also, there's a whole cadre of religious folks who are going to be at polling places in several places throughout the country, so that hopefully the clergy can also intervene. And so, we're looking at, like, what are these alternatives to calling the police? But clearly, like, if there's an imminent danger, then we do have to rely on the police. But we're trying to figure out other ways of de-escalation that does not include the police. And, this is kind of like also the same stuff that we would do when people say they don't want police in their neighborhoods, right? Like, then what's our way of being safe?
Right.
And so who are we going to call and who are we training up to be involved in those situations so that people feel that they can be safe at a polling place, And we're also telling people, if you don't feel safe, then you should vote by mail. And, in Pennsylvania, last day to request your mail-in ballot, you don't want to be putting it in the mail at this point. You're going to put it in the drop box, right? And so that's another way for people who don't feel safe, either due to intimidation or due to coronavirus, right? Like that is our way of keeping safe.
Yeah. We're talking, if you're just now tuning in, we're talking with Judith Brown Deonis. She is the executive director of the Advancement Project National Office. Go to advancementproject.org for more information. She's worked for a very long time in civil rights litigation and advocacy, particularly on voting rights, education, housing, and employment. Advancementproject.org for more information. So I know you watched with some interest and anxiety on the shotgunned nomination and approval confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. That happened last night. So this is happening at a time where we have like all sorts of challenges to voting rights, Judith, that are steadily piling up at the court. And how much should we worry about that? What are the cases we need to watch, and in what states?
Yeah, so we should be very worried because, number one, she's been confirmed right before an election. And we have, I don't know, what are we at, like 69 million votes already cast or something? And so in the midst of an election, to have someone appointed to the Supreme Court, the next president should have chosen the Supreme Court justice to fill Justice Ginsburg's seat. So that's one. Two is this justice will maybe sitting on the Supreme Court when a case comes before that court about this election. And that is also problematic. And then three is that there are, this court, especially the Chief Justice Roberts, has been gunning to, like, kill the Voting Rights Act. I mean, he's been gunning for it since he was, like, in law school. And so we need to be very worried about any case that comes up before the Supreme Court, because while they kind of they gutted the Voting Rights Act a few years ago, in a case out of Alabama. The other part of the Voting Rights Act is the piece that they really want, right, which is the piece that allows us to prove up discrimination by showing the impact on Black voters, right, through statistics. They would love to get rid of that part. And that will really mean that when we go to court, we'll have no tools, basically, to show discrimination. And so we have to be worried for that. But then also we're getting ready to get into redistricting. And so redistricting is the process by which, we allot political power in this country. And we know that the redistricting fights have been around, drawing all these lines, as we call gerrymandering, to protect particular people, especially to protect Republicans or to protect white voting districts. And so those cases often wind up in the Supreme Court. And so that will mean that this Republican-leaning court that is conservative will not be serving up justice, and that we have to be worried. So what that also means for us is we got to turn out the vote, because the check on that Supreme Court will be our power in Congress,
right?
Both on the House and the Senate side. If Democrats had controlled the Senate, this would have come out differently, right?
Yeah.
But then also our votes also matter down ballot. Who are we voting for locally that, will actually put in place the laws that protect us at the local level to actually protect us from what happens at the federal level and from the Supreme Court? So that's why voting really does matter, because it all comes together in what is our power to have control over our lives and over the safety for our community.
As we've been having a conversation here with Judith Brown Deanna, she is Executive Director of the Advancement Project. Go to advancement.project.org for more information, find out what they're up to, how you can get involved. At J Brown with an E, Dianis, Dianis on Twitter, on social media, where she's highly engaged. You can see what she's up to, where she's appearing as well. We happen to get her here on Reality Check Tuesday edition to talk about voter suppression. Keep an open eye for it. Definitely go to advancementproject.org for more information on what sort of voter suppression is taking place in what states, what they're being focused on, what we need to be vigilant about. Judith, thanks for your time. Really appreciate this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. Be safe out there. All right. Take care. Thanks for the work. Bye-bye. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, open phone lines at 215-634-8065. Toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free. 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll take your phone calls hopefully after this.
Man, this coronavirus has us all moving differently.
No doubt. Like washing our hands more and social distancing with the crew. I'm always telling people to give me 6 feet. We're here, Grandmom.
There's my babies. Good to see you got your mask on.
Wear mask. Stop the spread. For more information, visit www.pa.gov/COVID.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Hi, I'm Tobias Harris. We've been hashtagging and protesting, but this November, we can show the system what time it is. We've been victims of police brutality, stop and frisk, and other forms of harassment. On November 3rd, we take our power back. This year, everything changes. We can vote to end stop and frisk and put police accountability in the hands of the people. It's on us. On November 3rd, vote to make our community safer and our systems fairer.
Paid for by Black Vote PA, which is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. www.theelectionisnow.com.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital. Home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations. Because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
WURD Radio presents the following information to help you navigate the upcoming election.
This is Charles Ellison, host of Reality Check on WURD. More than 2/3 of all poll workers are 61 years of age or older. That's created a serious poll worker shortage as older poll workers are understandably nervous about health risks during pandemic. If you or someone you know under the age of 40 is looking for part-time work and is interested in contributing to their community, sign up to be a poll worker today. In Pennsylvania, go to votespa.com, click on Be a Poll Worker, and complete an application. Keep following us at onWURD on Twitter, facebook.com/forward, and hashtag Word on Politics for constant updates on election 2020. And remember, vote early.
Stay informed and vote. For more from Charles Ellison, tune in Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. or visit wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Here on Reality Check Tuesday is Reality Check Tuesday edition, 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check Tuesday. Just so definitely want to get a read on a number of things. We're about a week away. We're a week away from the election, obviously. So that's everyone throughout the country in a state of anxiety and nervousness about election outcomes. People are not confident in any projection until this is all done. I am namely one of them. So, definitely don't trust any of these polling projections until this is done. So if you have not already voted, definitely get out there and vote soon. Obviously, you might have some people out there who missed registration deadlines. All I can tell you is if you miss registration deadlines, or if voter registration deadlines in whatever particular state you're in, particularly Pennsylvania, or if you opted not to register or you're opting not to vote, stay out of our way. Seriously, stay out of our way. Stay out of, don't get engaged in any shaming conversations or telling other people that what they're doing is hopeless or senseless or it's ridiculous. Stay out of our way. Let us do what we got to do. So if you have not registered yet, well, I know some folks can't register because they probably haven't reached of age yet. We got a few young listeners out there, and I really wish that Philadelphia was the first big city to give y'all the ability to vote at the age of 16, but that's another conversation. We'll get to that after the election. But if you missed the registration, voter registration thing, you were excited about the election, but you were like, oh my gosh, I missed the voter registration deadline. That's okay. You can support these efforts in other ways. You can support these efforts in other ways by encouraging people in your community, members in your community to who are registered to vote, particularly in Philadelphia. 90% of the Philadelphia population is registered to vote. So that should mean 90% turnout, right? Exactly. And so if you wanted to register to vote, but you missed that deadline, you weren't really paying close attention to that. And that happens sometimes. There are a few people out there that happens to. You meant well. You can just support the effort, support voting rights, look out for voter suppression, fight against voter suppression, encourage your neighbors, your family, your friends to go out there. However, if you didn't get registered to vote or you're not voting because you feel like it's a road to nowhere, for whatever ridiculous, insane reason, or you're feeling like, you want to support the white nationalist regime that's in the White House, just stay out of our way. Stay out of other people's way, though. Seriously, stay home. Stay home. Keep it to yourself. Really. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. Alanian out of Nicetown is calling in for a reality check. How are you doing?
I am doing good. Sorry to hear about the news that happened in West Philadelphia.
Yes.
That's what me early this morning about the man, a father, who was shot.
Right.
And I am definitely against looting and making people like myself not have pharmacies to go to because they've been looted. But I believe Martin Luther King said, a riot is the voice of the unheard. But not only that, it goes further. When you follow the law, it takes them 16 months or 16 years or whatever to get to a decision to say that the police didn't do something wrong. So that means that people are going to be frustrated and they're going to riot. What options are we, you and I, giving the young black folks that they can take and know that they will be heard? We've done very little. So they do riot. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I still think that a couple of things on that, Alania, and you're absolutely right. I mean, Dr. King did say that, and there's, we could talk for days and get into analysis about the root causes of unrest, of social unrest and instability, political instability, political unrest, and things like that happen. They always happen. They've happened throughout history. They've happened recently, right? That doesn't mean that it's okay to actively. At the end of the day, I mean, rioting. I mean, that's why there's that distinction between protests and rioting. Rioting still leads to instability, and I mean, we shouldn't be encouraging the the unnecessary instability or rioting in communities. Like, we shouldn't be encouraging that. Just because it happens and there's root causes for that. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're careful about that. I don't support that. Like, I support protests, and I definitely with me, like, protests, like, I'm support of all protests that lead to a concerted and well thought out political strategy. Like, because the protest doesn't go anywhere if you don't have any kind of politics to back it up. Because then you go from it has to be for me, it's always been the 3 Ps: protest, politics, then policy, right? I mean, you if you have those 3 things aligned, you win. Like, it's just a winning combination, the 3 Ps. But that other, like, there's no R in that. There's no rioting. So there's no triple PR. But no, I hear where you're coming from on that. The other thing too is that I'm hearing from sources that there could be other bad actors out there. People have to be very careful. Black people have to, especially in Philly, need to be on the watch for white nationalist supported bad actors out there who are using events like this to instigate, to create instability, to create actual instability, so it can lead to even worse outcomes. And there are sources telling me that there may be evidence suggesting that those organized white nationalist groups like Proud Boys, which have been kind of creeping into Philly here and there, or trying to make a presence in Philly, or kind of testing the waters, dipping their toe in the instability or chaos waters, they may have been out there last night in West Philly. So that's being looked at. That's what I've been told, that's being looked at by local and federal law enforcement as well. So there's a lot of that going on, because you have to ask yourself, like, okay, when you look at any sort of unrest that's happening, especially in a major city right on the eve of an election, you have to question it. So I don't have any actual, like, confirmed evidence. I don't have anything that's confirmed, but it's just like the sources are telling me that it's something that's being, they noticed some things last night that seemed interesting and had, like, signs of folks like Proud Boys written over it. So we have to be careful. We have to be very watchful, because we saw some of that happen earlier on, right? Correct. Oh, I'm sorry, Alani, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you had one more point.
One of the leaders of the Proud Boys is a black Latino. I forget his name, but you can Google him. He comes up.
Right.
Yeah. The Proud Boys and the Patriotic Prayer, they are around.
Yeah, they are.
And they're definitely going to say, well, we're not prejudiced. Look at our leader. He's black Latino.
Right.
One of their leaders. All right. So, I'd like to know the police officers that shot him, were they both white? Or not that it really matters, but I'm wondering, I'm curious.
I mean, from what I saw, I think they're, from what I know, they were both white, right? And, it was it raises a lot of questions, that video. I saw the video too. It raises a lot of interesting questions that we have to ask. And so I think that there's, I understand, like, I was a little bit, still getting disappointed. I mean, I hope that the police commissioner decides to start having a direct conversation with the community by coming on to outlets like this, like WURD. I think that would be an important first step. You don't necessarily have to talk about, I totally get that. You don't have to talk about the particulars of the actual incident, but do talk about, okay, hey, well, what does this mean in terms of police community relations? What does this mean in terms of policing in America? How do we turn the corner on this and do things differently? Because to me, like police still, we keep seeing these incidents, these tragedies, like almost every day, right? You know, with some form or another in some major city or suburb or wherever. And it's like, are the police reading? Are you guys reading the room? I mean, you know, we have like this ongoing tension going on. You see what happens when they have these encounters, and then you have the subsequent outrage and protest and unrest and the volatility of it. And you still have these police officers. I mean, are police departments having the Philadelphia Police Department especially, like, have you had those internal conversations about, hey, listen, when especially with what's happening right now, please be over cautious, like extra cautious in how you're managing these encounters. Now, I did see, I mean, I saw that video and I saw some time where the officers were kind of circling around while the brother Walter Wallace, he was circling around. They were talking. They were trying to talk to him at first. I mean, let's just real talk on that. I'm not making any statement when I say that, but I'm just saying facts. I saw the video. They were talking to him initially at first, and I talked to an anonymous source within the Philadelphia Police Department and black police officer, and they were like someone I've known for a very, very, very long time, and they were like, hey, listen, anything can happen, even with someone, a threat or potential threat 10 to 15 feet away, and they've got a knife. That person I was talking to was like, you know what, unfortunately, I probably would have did that in the same situation. They were like, because anything can happen in like within seconds, just 10 to 15 feet away. But then I'm like, but like, really, like, does the gun always have to be the default option here? Like, you guys have got tasers, you've got batons, and you've got pepper spray. Like, I don't get it. Like, I mean, are those conversations taking place? Are there new mandates that have already been instituted as far as these tense encounters when responding to a domestic disturbance? And I don't see that yet. I'm sorry, Lonnie, I'm gonna let you go. Let me take, thank you for that. Let me go to Cliff out of Connecticut, who's calling in for a reality check. Cliff?
Hey, brother, I'll be brief, man. Listen, this is always the case and always the scenario. The scenario here in America, and what you're not seeing is, even going back to the whole scenario and all the evidence that you just mentioned, what you don't see and what America doesn't see black police officers having the same decision or using the same discretion or taking the same actions towards white criminals. So either black officers get a different set of training than white officers, or there's no white criminals. So with that being said, that's why it's specifically geared towards white police officers responding to the African American community. White people are not getting this type of subject and not getting these issues and actions towards coming from black police officers. Now, with that being said, which is a fact, with that being said, what's your thought with qualified immunity when it comes down to these police officers? And that's the big issue that's even happening in Connecticut, this qualified immunity when it comes down to police reform.
Yeah. I mean, it's that's a big part of the problem, right? Is that qualified immunity. I mean, I'm really, and I've been having more and more conversation. I had a real great conversation that I need to share with this audience while I hosted. Oh yeah, thank you, Cliff. While I was on WITF Public Media, I had to moderate a conversation last Thursday night about policing in America. And it was an all black panel. Well, no, it was all black panel. It was one Latino detective. And I had the commissioner who's black, the commissioner of the Harrisburg City Police, Thomas Carter. So he was on there as well. He spent the whole hour and a half. I had this retired couple from Philly, black couple from Philly, who were both retired Pennsylvania State Police officers. And then we had the former chair, Sonia Pruitt, the former chair of National Black Police Association. It was a really great discussion. It was an insightful conversation, but even they were saying, like, we need to seriously look at, I mean, one, that qualified immunity is a real big problem, in terms of, it takes off accountability or needed accountability on police when they're in these situations. And then two, they were pressing a lot for, we need to seriously look at professional liability insurance for the police departments, so that money's not coming out of taxpayers for when the police mess up and do something like this, don't fail to de-escalate a situation and kill unarmed or innocent people or people who are less armed, right? And then two, or professional liability insurance for the officers themselves. Like, listen, you won't have insurance and you can't be a cop if you keep like unnecessarily shooting people and killing people like this, like full stop. Like the insurance companies don't play, right? And so there seemed to be a lot of support for something like that. And there's studies out there, and already some smaller cities are out there who are doing it and showing some successful results for this. I mean, people are just going to have to get to the point where just not playing and like, okay, well, you know, that insurance analysis will identify, as they like to call them, the bad apples. And then they just don't have a job because you can't carry a gun, you can't have a badge if you keep on shooting people because the insurance, you can't get insurance. So, I mean, doctors have malpractice insurance. So it's something that has to be looked at a lot more closely. And that's something that there was a lot of conversation I noticed that was about. The other thing too is as far as like the police unions, once again, like in terms of who has the control here, who has the control in terms of police conduct, police training, in terms of what's expected of police. Is it the police departments and the police commissioners? Is it the mayors, or is it the police unions? But I going back when I was watching this video, I'm like, couldn't they have used the tasers? Like, I mean, and I mean, even if, say, Wallace was severely injured by the taser, I think it's like 50,000 watts of electrical voltage in your standard taser. And it's one maker of taser guns or stun guns in the country, right? And I think they have about 800,000 stun guns that have been deployed to police throughout the country. And typically you see, like, especially with beat police, like on the street police, like those two yesterday, they have their stun guns. So it's like, even if like he had been severely injured by that stun gun, or if it had turned fatal, because there are some instances where stun gun usage turns fatal, it can cause cardiac arrest if the stun things go right into the chest. But, for the most part, they're shown to incapacitate like a threat. At least, they would have been like, because even the parents of Wallace have been asking since yesterday, like, why didn't they just use their tasers, or why didn't they use non-lethal munitions? Why is always, I just wonder about that. Why is that always the default is the gun, which is lethal? And then too, like, y'all couldn't have aimed for his leg or something. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of questions there in terms of the training, or, martial arts. Like, I mean, like the Marine Corps has an actual, they call it the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. It's been around since 1956. Like, start instituting that in police academies. It might be a way to help channel police officer rage or stress, or help them manage the situation, because that's what martial arts does. It helps you manage, it disciplines the stress in that moment. And the Marines are very effective with that, learning hand-to-hand combat skills when they don't have lethal weapons. I mean, why not institute that in police academies? I mean, among other things, including advanced or more non-lethal de-escalation training, because they're only getting, like, on average 8 to 10 hours of that, while they're getting 200 hours of armed training. So, I mean, it's just all kinds of questions, and then it leads to, like, unnecessary tragedies like what happened yesterday afternoon. After break, when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be talking with Mike Green, economic strategist Mike Green. We're calling in next. We'll keep the phone lines open in case you have a question or comment. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Sorry about that, Brianna. I know we got to go to break. I just noticed the clock. We're going to take a quick break here on Reality Check.
Let me be as honest and clear as I possibly can. Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country. He has had more than enough time to prove that he can do the job, but he is clearly in over his head.
America needs a president who can handle the job. America needs Joe Biden. Make a plan to vote. Our lives depend on it.
Paid for by Ask Me People, which is responsible for the content of this ad. AskMePeople.org. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
At PICO, we know one thing is certain. Times have changed. From kitchen classrooms to couch conference calls, searching for a new job, or new ways to keep your family connected. These changes have become a part of our reality. That's why our teams are working 24/7 to meet the needs of our communities. So no matter how much things change, you can depend on PICO to be there with the energy and help you need to power through. Learn more at pico.com.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper and throughout the Philadelphia area, Delaware Valley, and also on WURDradio.com throughout the nation, throughout the world. In addition, WURD TV, WURD app as well. Watching you all, do appreciate comments and also salutations. Good morning salutations for the Tuesday edition of Reality Check on Facebook.com/4WURD. Joining us now is Mike Green, regular contributor here on Reality Check WURD, cultural economist, consultant, speaker, author. He's also chief strategist at the National Institute for Inclusive Competitiveness and co-founder of Common Ground Conversations on Race. Go to NICUSA.org for more information on National Institute for Inclusive Competitiveness, which he's partnered with some folks in Philly on that, and commongroundconversations.com for more there. Mike, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, Charles?
All right, hanging in there. So, quite a bit to talk about, quite a bit going on, obviously, in Philadelphia. I don't know if you had any initial thoughts with respect to that, especially on the eve of an election. And, so I know some people that I've talked to this morning, throughout the morning, and since what happened last night, have been obviously looking at the timing of all this. It's a very inconvenient timing on the eve of an election. And then there's just renewed worries about heading into that election with unrest and violence. Is that something you anticipate?
Man, I'm going to tell you something. I was listening to your opening just before I got on, and it reminded me back when I was in the military. I was a systems engineer in the Navy, but for a period of time, I served as military police in Long Beach. I trained with Long Beach Police Department and LA Police Department, and I only worked the night shifts with the gangbangers and all, back in the 80s with the Crips and the Bloods, the whole world, right?
Wow, I didn't know that. Go ahead. Yeah.
And when you talk about engaging people in a nonviolent way, or if necessary, in a violent way, but a non-lethal way, I was the one that had to take your handcuffs off. Me and my partner was the ones that had to pat you down. Me and my partner were the ones that had to take care of you if you got out of hand, and keeping in mind that, the police department are bringing in gangbangers and violent people. They shot somebody or killed somebody or hurt somebody. They're bringing them in and they're turning them over to us. And we're the ones who, unarmed, we cannot go into the cell area with any weaponry. That's the military. They're telling you, you can't go in there with any weaponry because we know you're going to take these folks out. It's going to happen. And we have to take care of these boys when stuff does happen. And from time to time, stuff did happen. And we had to take them down. But we were trained to do this. Here's the challenge that I put out there to everybody. The police department, civilian police department, mostly, and I'm trying not to be too broad a brush here, but mostly, your white police officers patrolling non-white communities are running scared.
Mm-hmm.
They have a fear reflex that overrides any kind of training that they've had.
Mm-hmm.
I was trained with those guys. I know what's up. But if you're scared, then, and you know, that fear reflex is not just coming from the fact that you patrol in dangerous areas. They patrol dangerous areas all the time. But when you patrol in dangerous areas and you also have ingrained in you a history of fear of the black man.
Right.
Then any black man, 12 years old to 25 years old, 80 years old, any black man strikes that fear chord. And that can sometimes override those trained reflexes. So we just have to be cognizant of that. That's all I'm saying.
Wow. Well, you know, this is because I didn't know you had that background. So it's a little fascinating because I got some other things I want to talk to you about. And by the way, too, phone lines are open if you want to ask a question, you want to engage in the conversations. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let me ask you this, Mike. I mean, any thoughts on how you then detrain or somehow exercise that fear reflex out of white officers? I know you have some thoughts with respect to that, and maybe it has to happen. Obviously, it's a lot more of a complex question, and it requires a deeper response because it's not just, oh, we got to wait till they get to the training academy. I mean, this is a lifetime thing. I mean, that's what you've been doing with the Common Ground conversations. Like, this has to start like at birth in the home, like before these white police officers become police officers, right?
That's exactly right. They have not learned their history of hate and hostility and violence directed toward black people. They don't know that they've inherited this. They've inherited rape culture. They've inherited a lot that they don't even know about because white teachers, politicians, journalists, they are embarrassed by the legacy of ugliness, vile, despicable hatred and hostility that has been levied upon black folks. And these young people, innocent young kids, grow up and become police officers and inherit the culture that is within policing. The police, obviously, everybody knows. If you know your history, and most police officers don't know the history, they inherited a culture, a legacy of hatred and hostility and violence against the black man and woman and communities in order to protect white communities and property. So this is long standing. Now, that being said, the question becomes, who's more afraid of who? Because when black and white police officers and communities come together, there is fear that is undergirding everything. And so if white police officers understand their own history, if they understand the challenges they're facing, there's a certain amount of empathy that can be ingrained in their policing. There's a certain amount of understanding that can de-escalate situations when you have a conversation with someone that you can relate to, and they can relate to you because they're hearing their own language, they're hearing their own history, they're hearing their own understanding coming out of a white man's mouth. It takes them off guard. But the challenge is that we have to learn to work together toward doing what the police are supposed to do, and that is service our community.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Mike. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I said our police should service our community, not brutalize the community.
Right. They should be
And they
guardians,
have to
not
have an
warriors.
understanding of those communities.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Mike, I'm going to take a couple calls here. Let me go to Elias out of North Philly, calling in for a reality
Hey,
check
good
while we
morning,
have our
sir. How
conversation
you
with Mike
doing,
Green.
Mr.
Good morning, Elias. How you doing?
I'm good. Hey, man, I got so much to say, but listen, there's one thing that's critical about police in our communities. Listen, I was a supervisor for years, and I ran a shop. And do you notice that cops are distracted? I mean, how are they allowed to take their personal phone, their cell phones, while they're on duty? You ever see them underneath Kensington Ave or just in the general in their vehicles?
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking at the surroundings. They're not thinking of premeditating how they're going to solidify an issue. They're so busy on their phones. What kind of crap is that? When I was running a shop, I told my guys, okay, put your personal cell phones out. Tell your siblings at home that if something critical is going on at home, call the office. They will relay it via the radio. Call home. These are little things that people don't think about. But this today's world is disgusting with allowing people to be at work and use their personal phone. How can you focus on your job?
That's good. That's an interesting point, Elias. Too. Yeah, I gotta let you go because I gotta.
All right.
Yeah. Oh no, I gotta let you go because I gotta. I don't want to run on time here, and I want Mike to be able to respond to because I got one more caller. But thanks, Elias. That's a very important point because that's not just in Philly. I see that everywhere. Like that sometimes you do them distract the police officers and being on the phones there. But thank you for that. Let me go to Lola out of Jenkintown, calling in for a reality check. Lola. Lola. Can you hear us, Lola?
Hello.
Hey, Lola, how are you doing? All right.
Good. How are you? Yes. How are you?
Good.
Hi, Mr. Green. How are you? I just wanted to say or ask a question about. I heard Mr. Green saying how he was in the police force. His background. Me living in the suburbs, I've seen where they have used de-escalation on white people. I've seen it with my own eyes, where they have asked for a white officer to come instead of having the black two officers that were there. Why is this always taking this killing of black men who is mentally disturbed in Philadelphia? Why is this continuously happening? Where are all the black police officers? Why isn't like maybe one black police officer and one white police officer? And then I know you have to go, Charles, but didn't they just pass something with a behavioral therapist or somebody supposed to be with them on these calls? Why aren't people calling captains? Why is this continuously happening? This is heartbreaking to see that video. And then the video looks like it showed that he dropped the knife on the sidewalk. What can we do as citizens, as Americans, Charles and Mr. Green, to stop this? This is we can't keep living like this. This is heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lola.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, be safe out there. Go ahead, Mike, and I want to ask you another question, but go ahead. You still there, Mike? Do we have Mike? Oh, Mike. Oh, yeah, if we wanted to respond to Elias and also Lola, we'll make some interesting points.
Yes, I can hear the concern in her voice and the passion and the anguish. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, these incidents are not happening in isolation. They are systemic, and they are manifested because of the culture that is within the police department, the culture that is continuing through generations. We inherited. I mean, this isn't new. As I said before, the history of policing is a history of brutality and abuse of black people. That is the history. And so if we're going to change that, then there's going to have to be an education of the police departments writ large across this nation, and not, as you said before, not just when they become police officers, although that must happen, and that must happen in their training protocol and in their education and ongoing professional development, but it must happen before then in the schools and in media and within our political sphere. At the same time, we must address what's happening right now because the culture is insidious, and it is perpetuating these kinds of incidents all across the nations, those that we hear about and those that we don't. So we must reform the culture of policing and the leadership in this country. As you know, when you look at the chiefs of police and you look at the Fraternal Order of Police and you see the kind of political statements that they make, policy is key because policy affects tens of millions of people. It affects large-scale communities. So when the police are supporting policy that is ingrained in white supremacy and racial hierarchy and the valuing and devaluing of people's lives by race, when police departments are expressing that openly, publicly, you know something's wrong with their culture and their leadership.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, because we're running up on time on the break, but I wanted to see if you had, by chance, I hate to do this to you at the 11th hour, but it's such an important conversation. We have like a couple of other calls. I want them to hold for a second. Are you available for like another 15, 20 minutes or so after this break? How do you look?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. I appreciate that too. I owe you one. I'm going to take a break. We got Bobby out of, I believe, Southwest, also Ron out of Northeast Philly. They have questions, want to engage the conversation. And Mike, I wanted to get to some other questions too. We didn't anticipate what happened yesterday afternoon and what's happened overnight in Philly, but you're adding some really good and useful texture to that conversation. So I really appreciate that we got you today after all this happened. So we're going to keep Mike Green on, cultural economist, and he has go to commongroundconversations.com because he makes these points constantly in those common ground conversations. So we're going to keep him on. Bobby, Ron, hold on. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll come back with Mike Green after this.
Hi, I'm Keir Bradford Gray, the Chief Defender of the Defender Association of Philadelphia. I've spent my career helping to reform our criminal justice system by advancing client-centered representation that empowers our communities to be stronger and safer. Our communities are still over-policed and under-resourced. This year, accountability is on the ballot, and we can finally have the community police oversight that we desperately need.
Paid for by Black Vote PA, which is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. www.theelectionisnow.com.
COVID-19 impacted a lot of things this year, including regular vaccination appointments. Vaccines help protect you and everyone around you, especially during flu season. Schedule an appointment with your healthcare provider today to make sure you and your children are vaccinated. Vaccines keep us safe, and they work. Skip the flu this year. Get your vaccination today. Let's stay protected together. For more information, visit health.pa.gov, paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Remember when Trump defended neo-Nazis?
You also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Or downplayed the coronavirus?
It's going to disappear one day. It's like a miracle.
It's time to fire politicians who failed us and elect leaders who will fight systemic racism, have a plan to beat the coronavirus, and will address bias in our healthcare system. This election, remember whose side Trump is on, not yours. Request a ballot now. Make a plan to vote. Our lives depend on it. Paid for by the NAACP.
Want the latest in WURD swag? Check out the shop tab on WURDradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WURDradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk Media.
What you get for your vote is important. For decades, Democrats like Joe Biden have taken our votes for granted. They have promised us a better future and never delivered. What did our votes for Biden get us? He wrote the 1994 crime bill that put millions of black men in prison for nonviolent crimes and a sluggish economy that left our communities behind. What does a vote for President Trump and his Platinum Plan get you? A contract with Black America that prioritizes black economic empowerment, 3 million new jobs for the black community, 500,000 new black-owned businesses, an increase in access to capital in black communities by almost $500 billion, better and cheaper health care, more education opportunities, and continued historic improvements to our criminal justice system. A vote for Biden gets you the same failed policies we've seen for decades. But with President Trump, the best is yet to come.
I'm Donald Trump, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Donald J. Trump for President Incorporated.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, we are on the phone with Mike Green. Mike Green joining us. We kept him on for a little bit longer. Really appreciate this, Mike. We owe you one. Cultural economist, consultant, speaker, chief strategist of the National Institute for Inclusive Competitiveness, NIICUSA.org for more there. And he's co-founder of Common Ground Conversations on Race in America. Go to commongroundconversations.com. He's still on the phone with us. Let me real quick go to Bobby out of Southwest. Bobby, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, excellent.
Greetings to everyone, first of all. And I used to live in Seattle, Washington. I had a job. I worked at a special commitment center where a person went through court and they had to be committed and could not come back in open society, okay? We were taught two things. We were taught how to take down people without causing them, danger to their health or, respiratory or whatever. And also we was taught de-escalation. Right. We need these officers to learn. Actually, they need people in situations such as the gentleman last night, that baby. They need, when that kind of situation is going, they need to dispatch a person who are skilled in de-escalation. There was no reason that child should have been executed in that manner. Had this area, police office and the department had persons trained specifically for de-escalation. This child had a gun, right. A knife waving, and he's 10 feet away. Do you know how far 10 feet is away?
Yeah.
These officers was not in immediate danger. They're trifling, and they're senseless, and they're heartless. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Bobby. Real quick, Mike, before I get your response on that, because I have a comment to what Bobby just said. Let me real quick go to Ron out of Northeast Philly calling in for a reality check. Ron?
How you doing? How's everybody doing?
Hey, how are you doing? All right.
In agreement with your guest, I can speak more towards Philadelphia than any other city. But I do know that when I was with the National Guards, right, out of Delaware, Wilmington, we were taught the minimum amount of force against the minimum amount of resistance, the maximum amount of force against the maximum amount of resistance. That's what I was taught and when it came to riot training, because there was a lot of crazy stuff going on back in the day in Wilmington.
Right.
And,
oh, yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Historically, right, the culture of hate and violence committed against black people in the city of Philadelphia is historical. I can go all the way back to 1871 when one Octavius Catto was assassinated right down on South Street on the day when they were voting for the, I think it was district attorney.
Yeah.
And the individuals who killed him, they were helped by the Philadelphia police to escape punishment. But in the final analysis, they were brought back to Philadelphia, this individual who killed Octavius Catto and another black man, and was put on trial and was found innocent.
Yeah.
Now,
I remember that. That's important history. Yeah, I remember that history too.
Okay, so the Philadelphia Police Department, as far as I'm concerned, has always been corrupt, has always had a culture of hatred and violence against black people in the city of Philadelphia, and nothing hasn't changed. And it's not just the city of Philadelphia, but it's other cities as well, too. It is ingrained in their culture.
Yeah. Ron, I'm gonna let you go because I want Mike to chime in here. I want him to respond on that. And Mike, real quick too, something Bobby is. Thank you for that, Ron. That's because that's important for people to know that Octavius Catto history. And the Philadelphia Police Department, their rank and file needs to understand that history too, especially with his statue being outside City Hall now. But Mike, I had asked a longtime friend who's a Philadelphia police officer. It's an anonymous source about what happened yesterday. A black police officer, and very saddened by what had happened. But he was saying 10 to 15 feet away is not really a whole lot of distance, and anything can happen. And he's like, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but he was like, if I was in a similar situation, I probably would have did the same thing, because he's seen similar situations, he's been in similar situations, and it's like they can move quickly. Someone, especially with a knife, who's belligerent or agitated, can move within seconds, just 10 to 15 feet away. So I just found that to be interesting. I want to get your thoughts, though. Go ahead, Mike.
So it's very interesting because a very similar incident occurred here. I live in Oregon, and a very similar incident occurred here years ago, where a mentally challenged young man was surrounded by police officers. Surrounded, had a knife. And everybody had known this guy was mentally challenged. And, I mean, he was well known that he was mentally challenged. And he had a knife, and he was threatening police officers. And the police chief came, and he told his police officers to lower their weapons. And he approached the young man. And he began to engage him in some sort of a conversation. And basically, ultimately, he disarmed the situation. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen every single time.
Right.
But here's the mentality that this chief approached his job with. By the way, he's a friend of mine to this day. This chief, and he's a white guy, he approached the situation with this mindset of collectivism versus individualism. Collectivism says that we're all part of one community, that I'm serving my community and they're part of my family. We treat our family different than we treat individuals that we don't know or don't care about. Individualism says this guy made a decision. I don't really care about him. I'm not going to put myself at risk. I'd rather go ahead and take him out. He deserves whatever the outcome is. That's the individualism mindset versus the collectivism mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Yeah, that's something we don't factor in. We're talking with Mike Green here. Go to @AMikeGreen2, @AMikeGreen2, by the way, on social media, on Twitter, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. And Mike's got some very special, very unique insights into the situation that has transpired in Philadelphia since yesterday afternoon and overnight. We're watching that very carefully. There's a lot of other things I want to talk to you about, Mike. I definitely want to get your thoughts on election eve. We're in the midst of election eve here. And so but let's kind of pivot here a little bit. That's why I wanted to bring you on for a second segment. If current conventional wisdom is correct right now, right, Biden wins. So what's the next steps to push that collective Black agenda? Let's refresh on that conversation. Especially now we're looking at what's transpired, and it's all connected, like what's transpired in Philly overnight. And, obviously there's going to be a big conversation about if you get a new administration, granted, there'll probably be automatic federal oversight, finally the refresh of federal oversight or revisitation of federal oversight, like consent decrees of police departments like Philly's. But what does that collective Black agenda look like to you? What does it need to be, Mike, if with a Biden win, if Biden wins?
Well, here's the challenge that I have, is that we don't have a Black agenda.
Yeah.
We say we do. But if I ask one Black man versus another Black man versus another Black woman, what is the Black agenda? I'm going to get three different answers. We don't have a Black agenda. We don't have one voice, one understanding of what we're fighting for, what we're advocating for. Now, that wasn't always the case.
Yeah.
I told you this before, that when Dr. Martin Luther King was alive, everybody knew what the Negro American Revolution stood for. It stood for ending segregation in schools, ending discrimination in housing, and ending discrimination in banking. They did not deviate from that. In fact, it was the Democratic Party after the election of JFK that tried to compel Black people who supported Dr. King to move off of those three issues. You know what they wanted them to do? I'm going to read directly from his book. He said this. He said the administration had fashioned its primary approach to discrimination in the South around a series of lawsuits chiefly designed to protect the right to vote. Opposition toward other actions on other fronts began to harden. With each new Negro protest, that's the ones led by Dr. King, we were advised to call off our efforts and channel all of our energies into registering voters. What are we doing today? All we're doing is registering voters and telling everybody that we can. Go vote, go vote. Well, yes, as Dr. King said, I'm reading again. On each occasion, we would agree with the importance of voting rights, but we would patiently seek to explain that Negroes did not want to neglect all other rights while one was selected for concentrated attention. Now, that's the point. Yes, we're going to vote, and yes, we're going to elect this elderly white man who has never in his life advocated for the ending segregation in schools, ending discrimination in housing, and ending discrimination in banking. But that's all we got. That's all we got to work with. But that's better than the enemy that we know hates us. So therefore, we're going to elect Biden and Harris. And now we have to advocate for the three issues that Dr. King was advocating for throughout the Negro American Revolution that rose up in 1963, died with him in 1968, and we haven't spoken of it since, despite the fact that every year we celebrate Dr. King and never talk about the Negro American Revolution and its three issues. So therefore, we have to educate.
And repeat those three issues again.
Ending segregation in schools, ending discrimination in housing, ending discrimination in banking. No, by the way, guess what? In 1965, when the Watts riots rose up, the governor asked a commission to tell him why those riots occurred in 1965. They wrote a report. The report said because of systemic issues with housing and the fact that California had joined many other states and had circumvented the Fair Housing Act. In 1967, 164 cities went on fire. 164 cities, Charles. We ain't talking about one or two cities. We're talking about 164 cities. Detroit suffering the worst of them. 67,000 white folks fled Detroit in 1967, fearing for their lives because of the rise of violence from black communities. What were they afraid of? 1968 Kerner Commission came out and said, y'all created, the white institutions created these ghettos. White institutions condone it, and white society supports it. They blamed the issues on what the systemic problems were that white society had created through urban renewal, through white terrorism, 100 years of white terrorism. Urban renewal flattened black communities across this country. Everybody's got stories about that. This is systemic racism that white society says it is complicit in advocating and sustaining, and that is the reason why these riots rose up. But guess what? There has never been a riot around the right to vote. We march about the right to vote, but that's not the issue.
That's not the issue.
The issue is that when we put you in power, Democrats, you don't attend to our issues. But the Democrats, the white Democrats, keep in mind that the Republicans are 80% white, the Democrats are 79% white. So if you think that white people are going to prioritize our issues when we don't, not happening. We better get on the same page. When we talk about a black agenda, it better be exactly what Dr. King was advocating for. In segregation in schools, in discrimination in housing, in discrimination in banking and access to capital. Let's go, baby. That's the three issues, and it don't take a rocket science to understand that.
Is that part of the problem? Because, Dr. King had that skill, that talent, right, Mike, back then, which is like lacking now, where he could in a very simplified, very kind of layman's way, like crystallize the issue or crystallize the key issues. Like he could just do that. We don't. I feel like, a lot of this is a messaging game. A lot of it is a messaging game. It's a conversation. It's a public discourse and conversation game. And a lot of us are failing to do that. Like failing to do it just the same way you did it just now. Like, hey, these are the three issues. Boom, boom, boom. But a lot of it's muddled. Like I know that there was. I was watching. What's his name? The Economist, the brother at the news school. Was it Derek Hamilton? with the contract with Black America, and I guess he did that. He was commissioned by Ice Cube to put that together, and he was upset about how he felt. I was watching him on social media yesterday on Twitter. He was upset about how Jared Kushner was like distorting what he wrote in his preamble, what he crafted along with other researchers in the contract with the CWBA document. And it's like, but the way y'all rolled this out anyway, the way you presented it was all muddled to begin with. Like it was kind of sloppy to begin with. And just in terms of the pure marketing and public relations, like that was the other thing about King back then. King was a public relations master. Like he just had that gift to do that, to crystallize that. I mean, does that have a lot to do with it?
Well, I do not want to disparage my brothers and sisters that are disenchanted with the status quo and have jumped on the Trump train. I don't want to disparage them, but here's the bottom line.
I know. Yeah.
If you don't know how to play chess, you're bound to be used as a pawn. And so at the end of the day, they are being used. But here's the problem. The problem is not that we don't know how to simplify our message. Black Lives Matter has risen up since Ferguson.
Yeah.
And it is a competent message. It is then when the white media comes to Black Lives Matter protesters and asks them, what are you protesting? They don't have an answer. Or they have a million different answers, which means there is no answer. And that is where the problem lies, is that our own people are not advocating for exactly the right thing that Dr. King said over and over and over. And you know why? We are not advocating for that because our kids are taught by white teachers. 80% of the teachers in our schools are white. They don't know the Negro American Revolution. They don't know what our priorities are. And yet, Black people that are raising children should be teaching this in our homes, and we aren't. So our kids are rising up. They're angry just like the young people were angry back in the 60s. But back in the 60s, they understood their history. They understood what they were fighting for. And they understood what they advocated for. And yes, Dr. King led that. A. Philip Randolph led it before him and organized. There was a lot of organization happening. But keep in mind, there was a lot of opposition, too, on both sides, in white and Black America. Here today, we should be advocating for our vision of a multicultural, equitable, inclusive American society that is ending discrimination in housing, ending discrimination in banking, and ending segregation in our schools. These are the three things that are going to create the economic foundation upon which we can build an inclusive America. But I got to tell you, that pathway to racial equity, equity being equitable ownership of the American dream of homes and lands and businesses that thrive, equitable ownership of the American dream is a pathway that goes right through the enemy territory. So we better be ready for the opposition because they're not.
Yeah. No, they're not. We've been talking with Mike Green. Mike, I really appreciate you giving us a little bit of extra time here. Economic strategist, culture economist. Go to @AMikeGreen2. He joins us here regularly as a contributor here on Reality Check WURD. Always appreciate his presence and time. Mike, thanks again. We'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks, Charles. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. All right. Be safe out there. Let me take a break. I think we had, I just saw this Spread Love out of Philly. Hold on one second because we're going into open phone lines after this quick break. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. I had to let Mike go. I didn't want to take up too much more of his time. He gave us a little bit of extra time, so I want to give the rest of his Tuesday back to him because I know he's a busy brother. But Spread Love out of Philly. Hold on just one moment. And everyone else, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
If you're thinking of voting by mail this election, remember that it's safe, it's secure, and it counts. But there are a few things to keep in mind. While the application deadline is October 27th, you should apply now and send your ballot back as early as possible, before November 3rd. When it comes to sending it back, you can drop it in the mail, use a designated drop box, or return it to a satellite election office. To find one or for more information, visit PhiladelphiaVotes.com.
What's up, everyone? I know you know the word, no, not the station, but this word, J-O-B that is, and our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorososbaking.com for details. 2020 is the year of voter options. We have many different ways to exercise one of the most important activities in our lifetime. Some of us might be voting by mail, but the rest of us can still vote safely while masked up and social distancing in person at your local polling locations. If you're in Philadelphia, learn more about where your polling location might be at either votespa.com or philadelphiavotes.com. For more information on how to vote in Pennsylvania, visit states.aarp.org/Pennsylvania. Vote early.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Many of us have heard this term before, but may not know what it really means. Compassionate living brings mindfulness and peace to the center of your daily life. Compassionate living can look like this. Number 1, be gentle with yourself and those around you. Number 2, choose to speak kindly to others, even when you're upset. Number 3, become a good listener and practice empathy at home and at work. We sometimes think in order to live with compassion, we have to become someone else. Not so. In fact, allowing peacefulness to be at the center of our daily interactions is something we can practice every day. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Spread love out of Philly, calling for a Reality Check. Spread.
God bless, Brother Charles. How you making out, family?
All right, how you making out? All right, thanks for calling. Appreciate you.
Yeah, give God the glory, more love. As always, give thanks for your work in the show. WURD family, of course, Empress Brianna on the boards, always doing an amazing job. And God bless all the victims. You know, our hearts, thoughts, and prayers are with them and everyone working to make it better, especially the brother that got murdered yesterday. God bless his family and all our hearts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was
absolutely.
I could get on with the brother Mike Green. I wanted to get his input on a couple of things. First, I wanted to say thank you for the piano piece you played from your daughter last week. It was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll pass that on. Yeah, it was. It shocked me. She cooked it up that previous evening. I appreciate that, Spread. Thank you.
Yeah, God bless. Give thanks. It was about your family. And I wanted to ask regarding the police. We hear this term, quote unquote, bad apples. But if they're outnumbered by the quote unquote good apples, then how come it's so difficult for the quote unquote good apples to easily expose and expel them? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why would the good apples be afraid if they got the majority?
If they got the majority, right. I always wonder about that too. Now they do have a program that they put in place past couple of years in New Orleans that I've been reading about or hearing that has had a lot of success, where they give the good officers, so to speak, latitude to call out and report the bad officers, and it's happening. You know, so they've been having some real success with that. It's something that like other departments might want to explore. But I just wanted to put that out there. But go ahead, Spread.
Okay, that was one point. I was hoping to get Brother Mike Green input as well. I want to thank him for coming on today.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more points real quick. I'm not going to stay on the line too long, Joe Willen. But also, I don't know if you got a chance to check it out. Democracy Now! Had a man on last week, Jeremy Scahill, SCA. Hill, Jeremy Scahill, talking about how the policies of all the previous administrations really facilitated the ability for Donald Trump to do what he's doing now. You can check that out to show the continuity of the quote-unquote American way. How Donald Trump, even though, I don't agree with the man personally, but he's really not an aberration of what this country's about, including Obama. So I think it's important for our people to be hip to that so we don't drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak.
Yeah.
I wanted to also address, when you were talking about reparations before, Brother Will Mega came on, and his phone line got cut off. Your opinion on the reparations side. I'd like to volunteer, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't the United Nations find the United States of America guilty not only of genocide, but also determine that we as a people are entitled to reparations? So, maybe there's an effort, hopefully, to bring that case forward before, what's that considered, the ICC, the International Criminal Court?
Right. I mean, there's been some exploration about that. You have like Caribbean countries, for example, they've explored that route. They've actively engaged that route and seeking reparations from European countries. But yeah, it was a panel back in 2016 at the United Nations that did conclude. It was a panel at the United Nations that said that the U.S. owes African Americans reparations. So it wasn't the sense of the entire United Nations, but you're absolutely right. It was a panel. I think it was the UN Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent, and they put out a report about that.
I just wanted to volunteer, if it's all right, that there's a precedent. I don't know if you remember, was it 2016 when the Charlottesville riots happened? The vice mayor of Charlottesville, right before the incident with the white supremacists and the young lady that got killed, rest her soul, and her family, where he'd actually obtained legally through court ruling reparations for his city, a black man. I believe his position was vice mayor.
Yeah.
And, there's a model that he had where those reparations were used to repair the community, I guess what would be considered social, environmental, and actual, financial infrastructures. So, if you could investigate that and bring more of that story to the people regarding, the precedent for reparations, how it's implemented, just to foster ideas,
Yeah. And for some reason, I think that there was, I think it was back in the early 2000s, there was some lawsuit by the descendants of African American slaves or enslaved African Americans. There was a lawsuit against corporations that had ties to or engaged in the transatlantic slave trade. So I have to look back on that and then engage that conversation. But we have to have a deliberate. If we're going to talk about reparations and how you got to have you have to have a deliberate, intentional conversation about it and engage in strategy. And so, that was my point too. I'm not against that conversation about reparations. I'm not against reparations at all. But okay, well, what's the plan for achieving that? But let me let you go, Spread Love. I appreciate you raising that because now you have me thinking, and I'm there's some people I know we could reach out to bring on to talk about that. Let me let you go, Spread, so I can bring on a few other people. Let me go to you too. Thanks so much for calling. Let me go to Woody out of Winfield calling for a reality check. Woody, how you doing, sir?
Hey, man, I was trying to get on when Mr. Green was there, and he really hit the point right on the nail, right on the head. The point that I see when he was talking about we need a plan. The only plan we have as Democrats is to go out and vote, go out and vote, go out and vote. And he was talking about way back then, Dr. King, he spoke at my junior high school, and just a couple months later he was killed. So it's like, wow, here he's talking about something that I was experiencing back there and seeing it. So when you look at what he said about housing, education, and all of these things were basically the same things that are going on today. Trump has made it clear to everybody that African Americans, what the hell you got to lose? Your schools are all messed up. You can't get money from your banks, and you're being gentrified out your neighborhoods. The reason I'm saying that is because that's the same thing this guy was saying. He's talking about discrimination in schools. Well, systemic educational discrimination is happening today. You see, just because you're in a school and you can be around certain housing. You know, you can't borrow the money because, as Dr. King said at my school when he left the stage, now go learn, babies learn, so you can earn, babies earn. That's totally unfair. If you didn't get the proper education, how in the hell can, excuse the expression, you be expected to pay the taxes on the increasing of your housing going up so high? You know, they're moving people out of the inner city because they don't want people there that look like you and me. They're our neighborhoods. That's where we go. So if you get a chance, also, this young man, his mother, that's what got me on that film, that the boy was killed yesterday. His mom was trying to stop it before it happened. She was trying to tell the police, no. And I said, oh, man, this lady could get shot, too. And I feel so bad. So my point is this. How America views the public is usually through its news media. And I wrote something called News Reports Fuel Fear of Black Males back in 2015, April 26, page 11A, it's Philadelphia Tribune. News Reports Fuel Fear of Black Males. This is where the key is. They create a public health crisis for us when they continue to promote that you're the villain. You couldn't just have a mental problem. All black males are to be feared. So if a police officer has a fear, particularly white, and like I told you, your ideology, even if you're black, in this system, we have white supremacy. Our ideology educationally is that. So if you have a white that has that kind of fear from reading and seeing the reports continually about the negativity of what black males do, then we're going to continue to create that type of fear that may get you or me shot, even if we didn't really do anything, because we're black males.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Woody. No, thanks so much, Sean. Let me let you go. I appreciate those thoughts. Let me go to Timothy out of South Philly calling in for a reality check. Timothy?
Yes, Charles.
Yes, Mr. Timothy, how you doing?
Unfortunately, I was listening to Mr. Green. I wish I could have talked to him also, like the other two callers.
Right.
We're talking about a position of multiculturalism. And we can never forget the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, what he had with his blueprint. He at least had in every state a school. He also had businesses with those schools. He had farmland in the South. The other thing, Charles, is that we got to remember the meeting that Martin Luther King had with Elijah Muhammad. That was the real meeting. And the autobiography that was to be made to Malcolm X, it was supposed to go to Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad said, I have a student for you. Do it on him. And when you have schools, hospitals, and business, that was always the format and function of the nation. Doing for yourself, Charles. Listen to me. The Catholics do for themselves. They have Catholic universities. The Jews do for themselves. Guess what? They have Yosef. So, Charles, we can never forget, during that time period, there was a man who stood amongst it all. And we have to never forget that blueprint of doing for self. So, Mr. Green, the multicultural is one thing. Elijah Muhammad said, if there's a politician that you were to vote for at that time, it would have been Alan Clayton Powell. So I would like to talk to him. What do you think about multiculturalism and how has it benefited us now? Or is Elijah Muhammad plan then good? It would be good now.
All right. No, I appreciate that, Mr. Timothy. So that's some food for thought, indeed. I'm gonna let you go because I want to make sure I get everyone on. Let me go to Joe out of Germantown calling for a reality check. Joe.
Brother Charles, hello, Brother Charles. Hello to your brother producer, the beautiful young lady Brianna. How y'all doing today?
How you doing, Brother Joe? All right.
I'm doing fine. All praises be to Allah, who came in the person of Master Fraud Muhammad, to whom all praises are due forever. Before I talk about the police thing, when Will Maker was on, Will likes to talk about sometimes like Kanye West. I just want to throw this out here before I hold the police. Kanye says a lot of crazy stuff about, black people. He said a comment about Harriet Tubman, but didn't do anything. Some of the ignorant comment that fool made. But you ever notice, Brother Charles, in all Kanye's outbursts and rants, he never said nothing about white Jewish people or white Jewish women or whatever. You ever notice that? He ain't that crazy. That's what I give you something to think about. Let that marinate on you for a minute, Brother Charles. He never said nothing about Jewish people for whatever reason. He never does. Just let you put that out there, okay?
Okay, I never noticed that. No, but yeah,
he's not that crazy. He's not that crazy, But anyway, on the police thing. You know, I get so tired, and I'm glad, and I appreciate Brother Timothy comments and spread love and Woody's comments for me. All them brothers made some key points. But you know, I get so filled up, Charles, when I keep hearing people call this station about and they Muslim, they want to talk about one humanity. And I'm, as a Muslim and a student of the Honorable Light, I'm all about humanity. I'm all about treating my human beings, whether they black, white, gay, lesbian, straight. I treat people the way I like to be treated. But damn it, that message should be going out to white folks. I don't see black cops going around gunning down white men, women, and children like Breonna Taylor, like the young.
I mean, you saw what happened with that black police officer out in Minneapolis, right? I mean, who did? I mean, when he did do that, like, yeah, he's in jail now. He's in prison.
He's in jail, and that's my point, Brother Charles.
They wasted no time with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's my point, Brother Charles. So that humanity stuff should be spoken to them. They should be go to those white radio stations, bigoted to the max and stuff, conservative, if you will, and talk that humanity stuff to them. Because again, no humanity was shown towards Brother Wallace yesterday. No humanity showed. You know, Brother Charles, up in Bucks County or Montgomery County about a month or month and a half ago, this went viral where this white man came at the police with a knife and stuff, and he was right up on them. Unlike Brother Wallace, they shot him in his leg. Now, you mean to tell me you couldn't have found a less lethal way to deal with that brother yesterday? But see, that's the devil mentality in them. When they come upon our people, their mindset is to kill. They don't have no humanity. They want to kill us and stuff. I told the story this morning, Brother John. I closed with this other, you pressed for time. And down in Jefferson Hospital about a month ago, almost a month ago, he was a psych patient. And he's a patient at the hospital. Brother had mental problems, Charles. He was out there playing with some bricks. And a white security guard from Jefferson, the same hospital with his brother, the patient at, he had a brick in his hand, and I don't know whether the cop knew he was a patient or didn't care because all he saw was that black skin. He threatened to blow the brother away. Thank by the grace of God that a sister that worked there as a tech came by and said, "Oh, don't shoot that man. That man is a patient here." She said, "Put that gun away. What's wrong with you?" And then a white security guard put his gun away. He was going to shoot that man down in cold blood. See, because this is the way they operate. This is what the Honorable Light was saying, Charles. This ain't about hatred. This is how a lot of these white cops and white people in law enforcement feel about.
Well, I mean, Mike Green did say he's like it's a fear reflex, you know, and he knows that as someone that worked in law enforcement, not just for civilian law enforcement, also military law enforcement as well, which I thought was real interesting. And I mean, military law enforcement, from what I know, from what I've gathered, military police is not even this bad. It was very interesting. And that's something I want to explore a little bit more. Let me, I have to let you go, Joe, because we came to break. Thank you so much for that, because I think it's instructive and we need to keep talking about it. But I have to take a break. And then when we come back on the other side, still having a conversation about policing, criminal justice, and mass incarceration, but looking at it from a different angle and looking at something that's not talked about enough, how homelessness and criminal justice intersect, how they clash, how homelessness becomes worse as a result of policing today and law enforcement and criminal justice. So we're going to talk a bit about that with Barbara Popp. She's the former Executive Director of the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, and she is now a part of the Urban Institute, and they did some recent research on homelessness and criminal justice, and that's coming up next. It's something we do need to talk about. Barbara Popp coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This year has been unprecedented. From the COVID pandemic to nationwide protests addressing systemic racism and calling for criminal justice reform. For weeks, we've been reminding you to make your voice heard in this election, and now is the time to act. Voting is how we empower our communities, and this election day, we can make things happen for us instead of letting things happen to us. So use your power and make your plan to vote today. If you signed up to vote by mail, don't wait. Complete your ballot, put it in the small envelope and seal it. Then put it in a larger envelope and seal that too. Sign and date it. Then drop off your ballot at your county election office today. If you have not signed up to vote by mail, go to the polls on Tuesday, November 3rd. Make sure to confirm your polling location. And don't forget to wear a mask. Polling places are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Election Day. To find your county election office or polling location, visit votespa.com. Take your power to the polls and vote. Paid for by Power Interfaith.
This year's been tough, but it's given me a lot of time to learn new skills through the internet.
I've been joining more classes during lockdown.
I'm doing an internship.
I taught myself how to play guitar.
So when people ask,
will I be able to learn online?
I feel like I'm ready.
Internet Essentials from Comcast has connected millions of families from low-income homes to the internet. So no matter what back to school looks like, students can be ready for anything. Learn more at comcast.com/Internet Essentials.
Hello, my name is Hassan Bennett. I did 13 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. Over-policing in our community has led to over 100 casualties like mine. It's time we, the people, take control of our future. And we do this on November 3rd by voting to make communities safer and the system fairer.
Paid for by Black Vote PA, which is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. www.theelectionisnow.com.
Keeping you informed. As a community service, WURD Radio and the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium wants to keep you informed about where you can get no-cost, barrier-free COVID-19 testing this week. Tuesday, October 27th from 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. at Northeast Baptist Church, 4744 Tackawanna Street. Thursday, October 29th from 3 p.m. till 7 p.m. at Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church East, 2800 West Cheltenham Avenue. And Saturday, October 31st from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. at Hartranft Playground Alliance, 800 West Cumberland Street. Stay informed and stay well with WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. This is WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDRadio.com. When we go on beyond Philly proper, Greater Philly area of the Delaware Valley, but throughout the nation and the world, it's a live stream at WURDRadio.com. Also, WURD TV and WURD app as well. Barbara Popp is the former executive director of the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, and she is also a part of a team at the Urban Institute that's been doing some research on the homelessness jail cycle. She's been working with that team at the Urban Institute. Go to urban.org to check out, when you get a chance, this recent briefing entitled 5 Charts that explain the homelessness jail cycle and how to break it. And we've got Barbara joining us by phone, I suspect from Washington, D.C. here on Reality Check. Barbara, how are you doing? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. It's great to be with you.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. So we don't talk enough about homelessness, I feel, right? And, particularly because it's been on the increase, we're anticipating it to worsen as we've gone through pandemic. People are bracing for more evictions, foreclosures, et cetera. So, but real quick, just to get a real quick snapshot of just how bad is homelessness in America? What's that overall picture look like?
Unfortunately, homelessness is a serious crisis across the nation. In every state in the United States, we struggle with homelessness. And estimates are that at any point in time, over 600,000 individuals are experiencing homelessness. This is likely an undercount because many people are trying not to be seen or not to be counted because it's such a terrible stigma. Of those 600,000 that are homeless, 200,000 are actually living outside in places not meant for human habitation, which is just impossible to imagine that people are living on the deserts. They're living in urban centers. They're living in rural communities, just trying to struggle without access to even basic needs.
Also now, what do you think? How do you think is being handled? Just real quick, like as far as I mean, obviously, there's lack of leadership at the federal level, but I mean, are local governments, municipal governments, county level, et cetera, and state governments, are they doing about the best they can do as far as addressing kind of that, especially that bigger homelessness crisis?
You are absolutely spot on. We don't have a strong federal response to homelessness happening in our country at this time. I was fortunate to work under President Obama, and we really were working hard to bring down the numbers of people experiencing homelessness. We had some successes with veterans, with families with children, and other populations, but the current administration has really stepped back, left it to local jurisdictions to struggle their way through it, and has been promoting the criminalization of homelessness and actually arresting and punishing people who are experiencing homelessness. And I want to just mention that of the people who experience homelessness, it's disproportionately people of color. In fact, 40% of Americans experiencing homelessness are Black Americans, and as you know, they nationally represent only 13% of the general population. So systemic racism is certainly underlying the reasons for homelessness, and when we leave it to local communities, too often they do adopt a police approach.
Yeah, that's and I know you had all looked at that in these 5 charts that explain the homelessness jail cycle, and you had kind of offered some guidance, some advisement to that team over at Urban Institute that provided us with that. How deeply intertwined is that relationship between homelessness and incarceration? So, like a sense of the homeless numbers throughout the U.S., like are there hot spots where like or do we see where the data show like, oh, hey, this is how many are ending up in jail as a result of being homeless, and this is sort of the way that they are engaged by law enforcement? How is that connection manifesting? And then 2, what are the percentages like in terms of the number of homeless individuals who are being jailed like that?
Yeah, so I just want to say really clearly that Americans who struggle with homelessness are not criminals, but once they become homeless and end up in unsheltered settings, they are at high risk of being arrested and having police contact. So when we look at those who are able to be sheltered and not outside, their amount of police contacts is just 2, but if you're unsheltered, you're going to have 21 or more police contacts. So, and those police contacts are harmful. They're not just friendly, how you doing? They're actually arrests, citations, fees, move along, and actual incarceration. And so, unfortunately, people then become labeled with a criminal record and all the challenges that has as it relates to finding jobs and housing and qualifying for benefits and even being allowed to vote. So it's a really terrible crisis in America to see that happening. On the other side, there are people who are incarcerated for other crimes, and at the time they exit jail or prison, they're not provided with supports or access to stable housing. And unfortunately, then those individuals are 13 times more likely to end up being homeless. And so when you're homeless, you're unlikely to be able to get back on your feet. They're more likely to recidivate back into jail. And thus we have the homelessness jail cycle. And as that perpetuates, it's harmful to individuals, but also really expensive to communities, and there is not a positive response happening for anyone who's involved.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. It just sort of it exacerbates, it aggravates that cycle of homelessness. What type? And so, real quick, go a little bit deeper, Barbara, if you can, into the types of offenses that they're being engaged for or they're being jailed for. It is just simply just being in a space, in a public space, and it just, I don't know, business owners or people just being agitated enough to call the police and just, we did have that conversation over the past couple of years about, being while Black or being in a space while Black, whether you're in Central Park or in Starbucks. But this is an ongoing thing. It's always been an ongoing thing. I remember this as long as I can remember, even growing up in Philly and seeing that kind of activity in Center City, Philadelphia. If there was a homeless person just minding their own business, but it just seemed to be unsightly for some folks, the police were called and then they were whisked off. So this has been a regular existence for homeless people to have police called on them. So what are those offenses that they are normally called on about?
So the offenses are as minor as sitting, as sleeping, just being in certain places results in the police being called. And the calls are coming from people who are who are housed and offended that they would have homeless people in their neighborhood. It's, as you said, it's businesses. And those calls are really, as they come in, communities handle them in different ways. And in some places, it's a direct line into jail. Ocala, Florida is a good example, where when folks are arrested for sleeping, and it's a law that's targeted at homeless people, if they fall asleep in the park on a bench, they get arrested and they are actually taken to jail. In other communities, they may have laws on the books that are not enforced, but they use them to coerce people to move along and to move their encampment or place. And that effectively kind of becomes a whack-a-mole game, where the police just are moving them from one space to the next. In the next place, there's additional calls, and they keep moving along. What happens when people are moved along is they often lose all of their belongings, their identification, their medications. It's extremely traumatizing and harmful to the individuals, and it makes them more and more unlikely that they're going to be willing to engage in services and treatment and ultimately access housing, because they've been so traumatized by this experience of the Criminalization Act.
Yeah. Are governments, I mean, from what you're saying on especially the local level, this is more of a municipal thing, in terms of law enforcement engagement of the homeless. Is this what we're saying? Like local governments, local policymakers, they're just pretty much using police as their primary vehicle to manage the homelessness in their particular cities, particularly if they have a homeless crisis. Like they're just, okay, this is the agency of choice, our police department, to handle a homeless crisis.
So I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, as we are seeing cities investing in solutions through housing and making efforts to help people get inside, either into their own apartments or at least into temporary circumstances. So cities can have these really progressive strategies underway, but at the same time, the public response, making calls to 911, expecting the police response, you can also have those same cities responding quite negatively when they get the police calls. And so both things can be going on at the same time within cities. And, cities are not resource sufficient to provide the level of affordable housing that's needed in our country. Many states didn't expand Medicaid, and so they don't have an adequacy of mental health and substance use treatment. There are not enough supports for families. And so what we need is a federal government that invests in the positive solutions to homelessness and gets the resources out to the jurisdictions to have the resources to do the positive solutions, and at the same time have a federal government that does not condone the criminalization of homelessness and promotes things like housing first, access to treatment, health care, and access to employment, the kinds of things that become solutions to homelessness. And that's, certainly that's what I'm hoping our country can really turn the corner on that. And I just need to say, in the midst of a COVID pandemic, these problems are getting even worse. And even today, we see the city of Los Angeles, which has made significant strides toward expanding access to housing and shelter. It also, though, considering an ordinance that would effectively make it illegal to be homeless in almost any space in the within the city of Los Angeles. That's not gonna make a positive difference. It's gonna just punish more people.
Yeah. So what's the what's the model, the framework you think? Like what's the the sort of the perfect or best practice framework for managing a homeless challenge or a homeless problem in a city? It is the example. I know Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is going through a very rough time right now within the past 24 hours. But just to point out, I don't know if you had seen it. You probably did hear of it, because I know a number of national experts on homelessness were like, this is kind of unprecedented what Philadelphia did, managing that homeless encampment in Center City. And now, they're transitioning the individuals that were there into temporary permanent housing, temporary/permanent housing, and it would be run by a nonprofit. Kind of this, is that the preferred model? Like what's the perfect kind of anti-homelessness or homelessness response model with multiple agencies coordinated. Maybe there's private-public sector collaboration, private-public nonprofit sector collaboration. What's that look like to you, Barbara?
You're absolutely right that it does require collaboration. It has to be a collaboration that's focused on meeting the individual needs of people who experience homelessness, and first and foremost, it's getting people to safe, healthy housing. The provision of some temporary housing does work. We know that though these large congregate shelters are not good places for people during a pandemic in particular, but they also are just not effective models. So many communities are moving to open up spaces in underutilized hotels and motels to provide some non-congregate sheltering opportunities. But it does require the mobilization of multiple resources across the public and the private sector to really make a difference. The other piece is if you don't have enough space to get people in, it's to provide some basic needs, as the CDC has said, hand washing stations, access to temporary toileting facilities, access to adequate food and water, just to get the basics to them, get the trash picked up, provide safe needle disposal, needle exchange, so that the places where people are living are healthier, but they also can be used by other people who need to use those spaces as well in public parks and metros and sidewalks and those kind of things.
How much money would cities be saving if they were to create that best practice framework as opposed to just jailing homeless individuals? Because there are all sorts of social costs, obviously, that are attributed to that constant, excessive, unnecessary jailing of homeless people, I would imagine. But there are economic costs to that as well. The economic costs from the social costs that keep piling up. I mean, it's, kind of looking at this from a business model standpoint, cities would actually save money, right? If they were to stop jailing, just reflex or knee-jerk jailing homeless people like that, I would think.
Yes, absolutely. The Urban Institute studied the city of Denver, and they followed people over a 90-day period, and they could directly incur at least $4,000 per person in the 90 days that they were homeless and on the street. So investing that $4,000 instead into housing and support is going to be a far better deal for taxpayers. And this, it's the kind of move that we're seeing progressive cities like Denver taking. But as I said, Denver is another one that also often is moving folks along. So that's the kind of positive approach that we need to see.
Yeah, positive approach and a money-saving approach. Since policymakers like to look at the bottom line, look at those budgets, and need to belt tighten in a time like this. So, it would reason that, this is the way you should go. This is the direction you should go. We've been listening to Barbara Popp. Barbara Popp's been working with the Urban Institute. They put together some great analysis on the connection between homelessness and incarceration, the homelessness jail cycle. It exists, and just exploring ways on how to break it. She's a former executive director of the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, and she's been joining us here on Reality Check. Barbara, really appreciate the insights here. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
All right. Good to be with you as well. Be safe out there. Thanks again. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be talking with Will Marshall of the Progressive Policy Institute, just going to do an onWURD segment and talking about battleground voters and climate issues. Battleground voters and climate issues. I kind of touched on that a little bit in a rant yesterday, so some recent research surveying from the Progressive Policy Institute. Will Marshall here to talk about that here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Voting is power. The power to elect candidates who won't treat coronavirus like a joke. The power to invest in Black communities. The power to create an economy that works for everyone. The power to invest in education and job training. And the power to replace Trump. Make a plan to vote today. Our lives depend on it.
Paid for by Ask Me People, which is responsible for the content of this ad. AskMePeople.org. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
According to the radical left, Kathy Barnett isn't supposed to exist, let alone be a candidate for United States Congress. See, Kathy Barnett is a black woman and a conservative. She spent 10 years in the Armed Forces Reserves. Kathy doesn't fit the victimhood mentality the left is selling. She grew up poor, and despite the odds against her, she built a good life. She loves America, and that's why she's running for Congress. Kathy Barnett not only exists, she lives the American dream.
I'm Kathy Barnett, and I approve this message.
Man, this coronavirus has us all moving differently.
No doubt. Like washing our hands more and social distancing with the crew. I'm always telling people to give me 6 feet. We're here, Grandmom.
There's my babies. Good to see you got your mask on.
Wear mask. Stop the spread. For more information, visit www.pa.gov/COVID.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars. 2020 is the year of voter options. We have many different ways to exercise one of the most important activities in our lifetime. Some of us might be voting by mail, but the rest of us can still vote safely while masked up and social distancing in person at your local polling locations. If you're in Philadelphia, learn more about where your polling location might be at either votespa.com or philadelphiavotes.com. For more information on how to vote in Pennsylvania, visit states.aarp.org/Pennsylvania. Vote early.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, waiting on Will Marshall with the Progressive Policy Institute. So he should be joining us shortly. Hopefully shortly. He was scheduled to join us. We're talking about voters in battleground states like Pennsylvania focused on climate issues, climate and energy issues. That's a real key issue, as many of you are already aware, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania being one of the biggest, if not the biggest, most decisive battleground state of them all. There's been a lot of conversation about around clean energy, climate crisis issues, fracking. That issue's been coming up, particularly since the debate, the last presidential debate last Thursday. Something came up, and you heard me ranting a little bit about it yesterday. So we brought on Will Marshall, the Progressive Policy Institute, who is here to talk about a poll that they recently conducted. They conducted it using ALG research, and they were looking at Pennsylvania, especially with Democratic nominee Joe Biden ahead by a number of points in a number of polls in Pennsylvania and also Ohio. A lot of that lead, particularly in Pennsylvania, due to voter perceptions on climate and energy issues. And we do have Will. He's joining us by phone here on Reality Check. Will, how are you doing? Welcome back.
Hey, thanks a lot. Great to be back.
All right, excellent. It's good to talk with you. So first, I did want to ask you, get your thoughts on how important the issue or the topic of fracking and natural gas is in Pennsylvania. We talked about it a little bit yesterday here on this program. I was just a bit irked and a bit irritated by the tone of that conversation, the direction of it, since last week, since Thursday. But is this a decisive issue from what you're saying, and based on this polling here? Is that a decisive issue that could tip the balance in Pennsylvania?
Well, the answer is I don't think so, but I can't read voters' minds and know exactly how they react.
Right.
Obviously, the person who thinks it is really important is Donald Trump, because he's been in Pennsylvania. In fact, you can't get rid of him. He is running around saying that Biden's, so-called gaffe in the debate about the end of the oil industry is, a terrible danger to the gas industry in Pennsylvania. So clearly, he thinks it's important. But our polling, which let me admit it's not. It was before these events, so we wouldn't pick up any changes that happened if they have happened since then. But what we see is that people look at Biden as a pretty moderate and reasonable guy, and they don't really put him in the ban fracking crowd, and he's made it clear to voters in Pennsylvania that's not where he is. He's not in favor of that, even though Trump keeps accusing him of it. So
they think he has a reasonable approach, and at least that was what our poll found, and that's probably providing a kind of a firewall against some of these Trump claims because, a lot of sensible voters don't automatically believe things just because Donald Trump says them.
Yeah. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that too. What are those voters saying? How pragmatic are they? And you looked at both Pennsylvania and Ohio. A majority of Pennsylvanians, Ohioans, saying that climate change is a real and very serious problem. I think it was like 71% Pennsylvania, Ohio voters. So they get it. They're like, hey, this is crisis level here. We have to do that. Talk a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah, you could make the argument that it's Donald Trump who's out of step with mainstream opinion in Pennsylvania and Ohio because, he's sitting there stocking his administration with all these climate deniers. But as you point out, 71% of the voters in our poll say that climate change is real and a very serious problem. And it's also true. We drilled down, so no pun intended, on the gas-producing counties of western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio, the shale belt counties we call them.
Yeah.
Took a deep dive there, and we found that the same thing's true. It's slightly less true, but most voters there strongly believe that climate change is real and they want action. And so, on those grounds, Donald Trump is not with majority opinion. Obviously, though, the shale gas is a hugely important industry, particularly in Pennsylvania, to a somewhat lesser extent in Ohio, but still an important extent. Both of them are within the top 5, gas-producing states in the country. But, again, our poll finds that people believe climate change needs action, and they're open to a conversation about a transition toward clean energy, away from fossil fuels. They don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, and I think they're right about that. They're pragmatic in the sense that they know it isn't going to happen as rapidly as some of the the Green New Deal acolytes are claiming it's going to happen. Right. But they understand that there's a transition afoot, and I think they probably understand that gas, in a way, supports the move toward greater renewable energy on the power grid because as attractive as wind and solar may be, they're not on all the time. And so you got to have a backstop. You got to have a backup, and a cheap and efficient, reliable backstop is natural gas power generation. So I think that's where people are. They understand that fossil fuels aren't going to reign forever, as Donald Trump seems to think. But there are lots of people working in the industry, a lot of people whose jobs indirectly rely on the industry. Everybody knows it's part of the Pennsylvania economy, an important part of it. So, people are concerned about job losses from a precipitous rush to abolish fossil fuels, which is not what Joe Biden's for, but that is what Donald Trump is trying to claim he's for.
Now, do they understand this from, I noticed there's a lot of conversation about, like worry over climate crisis. They understand you have to transition to clean energy. They understand that this is that, they're viewing natural gas or fossil fuels as a bridge, sort of, when you were saying the fossil fuel industry can support the development and the growth of clean energy. I guess that's, support also means in terms of resources and money. Well, because you're seeing this even from the fossil fuel companies themselves, where they're like, hey, we're going to clean energies, what's the future? And so, but we're going to have to pay for that transition. So we'll just use our natural gas or fossil fuel profits to subsidize and underwrite that. But are Pennsylvanians, Ohioans, are they looking at this from a public health perspective too? Because, we've had that issue, particularly with fracking and the pollution and like water wells, also the air pollution from the methane emissions, that's caused like a variety of respiratory illnesses and also cancer, a variety of chronic illnesses in some of those places throughout parts of Pennsylvania and Ohio. Are they also understanding the public health consequences of this?
Well, I don't. Some of those consequences are debatable, but I don't know that I can't. We didn't drill down on that particular set of arguments. We looked at this through the prism of the economy and people working in the sector, and what they think about the role of fossil fuels, and particularly gas, in this energy transition. And, look, I mean, what people are strongly opposed to in Pennsylvania and Ohio is any one of these bans on extraction of gas, because they understand not only do they understand that it's, that it's a big part of the economy, but they also are worried about energy prices. If natural gas is cheap, and if you take that away, you have two problems. One is that energy could become more expensive, and people kind of understand that intuitively. And the second is that you don't have grid reliability. And we've seen this out in California. You got it when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing, because we do not yet have good technologies for energy storage, reliable technologies for energy storage. We have to have a backup. And so, but I think, your question is a good one, and I think, they understand that, that fossil fuels and natural gas are not forever. They've made the sort of the shift toward the view that we are transitioning to a clean energy economy, and they support that. It's just that they see gas as part of that transition and not as a complement to and an enabler of that transition, more than they see it as in some way a threat to it.
I wonder too, why still view. I got a number of questions here for this too. Well, first, I mean, in terms of PA voters, Pennsylvania voters being pragmatic about fracking, about that issue, and so Trump thinks that this is a major issue, but it's not just Trump thinking it's a major issue. I mean, look at the media conversation since last Thursday. It seems to be more media kind of peppering of Biden and critique of Biden and whatever gaffe he made with respect to fracking, and sort of dissecting, I think kind of unfairly and unnecessarily so, his climate response plan, versus like very little critique, if any, on the fact that Donald Trump thinks climate crisis is a hoax, and he doesn't have any kind of plan. So, I'm wondering, like, I mean, you're saying Pennsylvania voters, or this survey saying Pennsylvania voters are pragmatic about the issue, but that they understand, like, Biden might be reasonable as it unfolds, but why is it still being framed as such a big problem for Biden? Why is the media still framing it as such?
Well, I think the answer to that question is simply that we're in the last week of this interminable presidential election, and Donald Trump is flailing, and he's desperate to get traction on some attack line on Joe Biden. I mean, he tried to make this bogus, scandal about, money and, Russian money in this crazy laptop. He tried to convince people that Joe Biden somehow is receiving millions of dollars from Russian oligarchs and the Chinese. That's palpably not true. That didn't stick because, people know Biden, and they know he's not corrupt and somebody that behaves in that way. And then Trump tried to make him out to be the Trojan horse for the left, right? That AOC and Bernie are right at his elbow, ready to take over the wheel as soon as he gets elected and drive policy toward Medicare for all and fracking bans and all the things that they believe in, but which Joe Biden does not believe in, and made it clear in his defeat of Bernie Sanders that he didn't believe in these things. And so I think it's just that, Trump has been so desperate to find something that he can latch on to and create a kind of one of his, hate issues, right, where you can get his people chanting. And he thinks that at the end of that debate, Joe's comments on oil gave it to him. So he's out there making a big deal out of it. We did this poll because we thought it was an important issue, and that it was important really for Joe Biden and the Democrats to understand that when we go into Pennsylvania, when we go into Ohio, and for that matter into Michigan and Colorado and New Mexico, energy politics isn't like it is on the two coasts, right? It's not like it is in California. And so we wanted to just remind people that this is a big country and a lot of different views, and you got to understand what's important to folks and frame your policies to put together broad majorities. And Biden's done that. And that's why I don't think that these attacks are going to get as much traction as Donald Trump thinks they're going to get. But certainly he seized on it because, frankly, he's got nothing else. He's behind in all the polls, and he's lost a lot of voters. With all those suburban voters, and the Democratic base is motivated. People have we have almost 60 million votes with Democrats way out in front and mail voting now. So I think the man's feeling the heat. He's looking for something to change the topic and throw the spotlight on the supposed gaffe and on Biden supposedly his attempts to Trump is saying do a death penalty for the gas industry.
Speaking of that supposed gaffe, right? I mean, is there a better way, however, because I didn't feel like Biden's response, and this is not the first time, was as optimal as it could have been to that whole fracking issue, or that issue of like transitioning from the old school fossil fuel economy to the new school clean energy economy. It just still having trouble, still kind of flubs that conversation. It seems. I mean, there's still some need to work on that messaging, because I think at the end of the day, like, I think voters just want to hear. I know I want to hear. Hey, okay, how many jobs are lost or remain stagnant? How much growth remains stagnant or doesn't happen when we keep sticking to an old school fossil fuel economy versus all the jobs that are created and generated, all the GDP and growth we get out of a new school clean energy economy, full stop. And I don't understand why he and other Democrats just don't explain it that way. Hey, you can get with this or you can get with that, with clean energy.
Well, I think he has. He's got this big $2 trillion, clean energy transition plan, huge, and he's talked about all the jobs that are already being. This is not a conjecture about what might happen. We're already seeing really robust growth. In fact, I would wager we're seeing more renewable energy jobs being created right now than we are seeing fossil jobs, just because the slowdown, the COVID shutdowns have slowed down the economy. But in any event, we've seen a lot of renewable energy jobs, and we've seen the price of renewable energy fall dramatically in the last 15 years. And so, Biden understands that and says we're going to. And the way I think he talks to people about it, particularly in the Midwest, in the industrial states like Pennsylvania, is to say, let's look at electric cars. The Chinese are already out in front in the electric car sector, and Biden's saying, look, we need to make electric cars in America. That will have the benefit of weaning our automobile sector off of oil. But it also will generate lots of great production jobs for blue-collar workers in the old industrial sectors of the country. And so I think he does see the job, and has done a pretty good job of talking about middle-class job creation coming from his clean energy plan, and it's popular. If you look at the polling on it, people like it. And I grant your point, though, and I'm frustrated sometimes. I don't think in that debate he did as good a job as he could have done in saying, look, here's how it works. Here's how transition works,
Yeah.
But let's play the other, go the other way. Suppose he had sort of adopted the Bernie and the AOC position, which is ban fracking today, abolish in some ridiculously short timetable. That's going to be profoundly disruptive to millions of workers across the country in a way that's totally unnecessary. What we need is a transition, not a hard stop. And that's what, that's what Biden has been saying. But I think he could talk more about how the transition happens. And by the way, because we're doing work on this at PPI, if we invest in, carbon capture and storage technology, it could be that gas continues to play a role for a very long time if it's zero carbon emitting. If we can capture all the carbon that gas emits, and to your point earlier, we got to do a lot better job of controlling methane emissions, with the so-called fugitive methane. But if we do that, both of these things, then we may find that clean gas, can play a role in a zero carbon emissions world, which Joe Biden says we should try to get to by 2050.
Right, right. We've been joined by Will Marshall. Will Marshall, Executive Director at the Progressive Policy Institute. For more information, you want to go check out their recent poll, this recent poll on battleground voters in Pennsylvania and Ohio, their thoughts on climate issues and energy. Go to progressivepolicy.org, progressivepolicy.org. Really insightful poll. It's got some great data and findings. Check it out like I have here on Reality Check. And Will join us here for a second time. We definitely have to have you back, especially either we try to get you on, Will, during or right after the election. Get your thoughts on that, what the outcome is. Thanks so much.
Well, hey, man, thanks a lot. I really enjoyed talking with you about these issues. Thanks.
Same here. All right. Thanks again. All right. Let's take a break. And when we come back, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
We've all heard people say this election is the most important of our lifetime. Let's remember why that's true. Under the Trump presidency, racism has found a tragic new normal, emboldened by a president who has demonstrated disrespect and disregard for our communities while embracing and protecting white supremacists. While the coronavirus was taking our family members from us, Donald Trump deceived the nation by withholding information that could have saved lives. He protected himself instead of protecting us. Our economy is in shambles, our children's education jeopardized, and the Trump administration is in court right now trying to take away our health care. This has to end. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the leaders we need to chart a path toward opportunity, justice, and healing. From affordable health care to quality education and jobs, there's only one choice to move us forward. Vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Paid for by Black PAC and Priorities USA Action, blackpac.com and prioritiesUSAaction.org, which are responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Hi, my name is Dr. Blake. If you're out there with residual baby fat and you want that waistline back, Smart Lipo Laser is for you at Blake GI Med Spa Services. It is affordable, minimally invasive, minimum discomfort, minimum downtime, and no loose skin. You will see results in 24 hours. Give us a call at Blake GI Med Spa Services today, 215-849-4902.
New Voices for Reproductive Justice is mobilizing Black women in Philly and our families to vote on Tuesday, November 3rd. You can mail or drop off your ballot or vote early in person at 20 locations in Philadelphia and Delaware County right now. For more information, visit newvoicesrj.org/2020elections. That's newvoicesrj.org/2020elections.
He's back. This is Reverend Al Sharpton, keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. In times like these, we have to stay connected. At a brand new time, Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight. I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD. Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight. This program is pre-recorded. No phone calls, please. Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. I know quite a few of you made some comments too on our Facebook live stream. Our WURD TV Facebook live stream, that's at facebook.com/4word for those of you on Facebook. We really appreciate folks who are checking in. Thank you, Viola Richburg Gray, who's listening in. Thank you so much. She was saying we moved to Delaware because my daughter was giving us trouble in school, Martin Luther King High School. So not sure what that conversation was about, but no, thank you, Viola, for tuning in. Shalata C.A. Sankofa, good afternoon to you. WN Page as well. Thank you for listening. She provided some really good insights and some links to that reparations conversation. Raphael Suleiman is saying, always, love the commentary and the insights that you give, Raphael. We disagree with you on this. The ADOS movement online and the commentary of Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore on YouTube deal with the reparations debate caller. I would I mean, maybe go there just to see, like, kind of get a sense of what their conversation is like. Um, I probably, I would say, kind of steer clear of them. That's just my take on that. That whole ADOS movement is rather dangerous, and I mean the receipts are in on them as far as the sort of quiet backing that folks like Yvette Cornell and others are getting from uh, white nationalist funded fronts, like anti-immigration committees. I think it's the name escapes me, but there's this so-called Immigration Reform Council that is like MAGA funded, and so it's just all kinds of weird, sort of bizarre institutions that Yvette and even to a certain degree Antonio Moore are plugged into, and there's just not very credible voices on this issue of reparations. The organization has been doing that work for a long time on reparations is in Cobra. I would say like a first good start is the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. Start with that. They're a much more credible voice, and no evidence of them receiving funding from nefarious and surreptitious sources. As in Nancy, in cobraonline.org, cobraonline.org as a good start. There are other folks that are out there that are way more credible and that aren't involved in kind of shady social media activities like Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore with the hashtag ADOS and just spending their whole days. I mean, the only problem with the one thing I would fault in Cobra with is they probably have to step up their communications and social media game so people aren't as aware of them, particularly if you're in the social media space, because they don't do much there, but they've been doing that work for a long time, whether you agree with them or not. But they've been engaged in that work for years, for decades now. And so, but people are acting like the ADOS movement is the one that's been like leading the charge on this. No, it's been in Cobra, like real talk on that. And so I would like highly caution people to get caught up in or to feel like they are that Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore, who spend their days just bashing people excessively and nonstop on social media, which is not a good way to get people get exhausted and fatigued with that after a while. That's not a good way to have people jump onto your cause or to support a cause like reparations. You want an insightful, analytical, and reasoned and strategic voice on that issue, and you want to have a plan. And so, these are also part of that whole non-voting, hold your vote hostage crowd. And that's not going to get you to reparations doing stuff like that. So in Cobra, as in Nancy, cobraonline.org, 215-634-8065. But thanks for the insight. Thanks for the comment, Raphael. Raphael did make you did have some really good comments with respect to our earlier conversation on policing. Where Raphael was saying the recruitment of black police officers has gone down because the applicant pool in the city is so low. As your caller, Woody the Barber, states, there is a lot of functional illiteracy in the city among adults and the youth. We need an independent leader to confront the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers and the Teachers Union to find out why the level of illiteracy, proficiency in math and reading among the student population is so high. Yes, we do. I have reached out on a few occasions to also the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. No response yet. To talk about the Philadelphia public school system. Like, just because it's a teachers union doesn't mean that they're right on everything or that they're saints on every issue. And that's a pertinent question. We've definitely called out the Philadelphia school superintendent, but yeah, like, what are y'all, the teachers, doing? What's the teachers union's views on this as far as these really like abysmal literacy rates in the city of Philadelphia? That's not just a reflection on the Philadelphia school superintendent. That's a reflection on, if I'm a teacher, and I understand teachers are woefully underpaid. I get it. I really do get it. It's one of those, it's a very noble profession, extremely noble profession. And it's also one of the most underappreciated. You can make the argument it is the most underappreciated profession in our society today. And they deserve, they really deserve a lot more in terms of that support and those resources and the pay. I'm totally agreed on that. But if I'm a teacher and I'm in a classroom, I don't care how little I'm getting paid. I have a responsibility overseeing the evolving, developing, impressionable minds of young people from pre-K on. And best believe, like my mission, like my main mission would be to make sure, okay, you know what, I may not be able to get everything right in this classroom, but you know what, one thing I am going to get right is before these kids leave my classroom, they are going to know how to read. That is obviously not happening inside Philadelphia classrooms. So that's not just a reflection or commentary on the Philadelphia school superintendent. That's also a commentary, that's a reflection on teachers, on Philadelphia teachers. Like, what are y'all doing up in class? All, you know, and I know now most of you are virtual, but what have you been doing? And that is, I think that Raphael brings up an excellent point. And people need to question these things. There should be, you know, I'm going back to it and I'm going to gnaw on this like a dog because no one's making it, you know, we get protests on everything else. Don't get protests on the fact that you got a whole bunch of kids and a whole bunch of grown people in the city of Philadelphia can't read. And then you're wondering why things are falling apart in the city. You wonder why things are falling apart in the city when you got so many people. And I'm glad Woody calls me almost every day and keeps pressing me and the rest of us on it. Keep doing that, Woody, because Philly's just not listening. That's one of those things that's easy to solve if people had a sense of urgency around it. Like the gall of Philly to allow that many people and that many young people, that many students to languish in this city and not being able to read. And not holding, it's not just about holding the superintendent accountable for that, it's about holding the teachers accountable for that. And then that's a core problem. That's a foundational problem. And see, that leads to all other types of issues. And then we're like, why aren't there more black police officers? Well, you know, if you got a huge adult illiteracy crisis in the city, or if even the people who can read can't read up to a certain level, that's going to create problems. That's going to create problems down the line. You know, so that has to be questioned. I don't understand with the Philadelphia PFT. I've reached out to them, even personally, on a few occasions. They have not come on this program yet. I know the superintendent won't talk to me. You know, that's fine. I've resolved on that. Can I at least get the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers? It'd be great to talk to the teachers union, because that is one of the questions that come up. I've had, you know, what's even messed up is I've had Randy Weingarten on here, the national teachers folks in Washington D.C. You know, when we can get Randy Weingarten loves coming on. I've had the boss of all the teachers unions in the city on this program on several occasions. More than happy to come on and addresses those questions. For some reason, PFT's scared. I'm like, I'm not going to bite you. you know what we're going to talk about. So I don't get that. I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe someone else who knows them, or maybe someone in that union membership can say it. I'm not trying to be hard on teachers, but like there's some teachers out there, y'all are not doing your job. You know, you're letting students slip out of your classroom, can't read, and that's a problem. That should not be happening. That should be like the least thing. That's the most minimum you should be doing. That's the basic minimum. I want to make sure these students in here, these young people in here, read. They can read at an optimal level, not just at their grade level, but at the most maximum level they can. I want to make sure that. I mean, that's the basic thing. I mean, as a teacher, a public school teacher especially, but then you have folks who want to side with the unions on everything else, don't want to, you know, try new, innovative, creative things. You know, want to keep certain models and new, fresh paradigms away from black and brown parents, you know, but then you can't teach, you know, the vast majority of the kids in the school system how to read. So then what else are people supposed to do? Like, I mean, it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable the amount of just senselessness. I mean, it's just rare trifleness, man, in terms of how people address these real critical problems in this city. It just never ceases to amaze me. It never ceases to amaze me. And it's been ongoing since I was a kid. Like, I noticed this stuff when I was a small child growing up in North Philadelphia, and stuff's still not fixed. Stuff is still not fixed. Philadelphia ought to be ashamed of itself. It really. So, you know, we have this problem with this brother being tragically shot fatally overnight, and we're going to have to deal with that. But that it's a reflection of some serious, like, root systemic ongoing, like decades, generations long issues in Philadelphia that we know what the problems are. And people just refuse to apply common sense, or refuse to like just call these issues out, identify the core problems, and get them addressed. All right, that wraps this Tuesday edition of Reality Check. I gotta go. I'm sorry, I didn't look at the clock, Brianna. Thank you. Brianna Brown is on the board of steel. Troy Wilmer will be back soon, I promise. But really thank and appreciate Brianna Brown being on the board of steel today. You should thank her too. Continue to listen in to Reality Check Wednesday, 10 a.m. God willing, I'll be there tomorrow, 10 a.m. sharp. Philly and beyond. In the meantime, I want you to stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly, please stay safe out there. Keep everyone safe around you if you can, as best you can. All right, take care. Have a great afternoon. Good evening. We're headed into The Source with Andrea Lawful Sanders coming up next here on